Welcome to Getting Real with Josh Boyer, the show that embraces radical vulnerability and authenticity. Josh creates a judgment-free zone for his guests to share openly and candidly. Listen in as they discuss life, philosophy, passion, drive, empowerment, and purpose. Join us as we seek to leave our world better than we found it and send ripples of positive, lasting change out into the world.
So yeah, man, I'm super pumped to have you. We've been trying to get this together since what, January?
Yep, it's been a while. Our old boy Phoenix Hanks.
Oh man, that's my brother from another mother, dude. Love
I was just listening to your show with him again. He's a riot. I mean, I think when he first reached out to me, I didn't know. I think he saw me on something Doc Todd posted.
Yeah.
And then, the conversation, 2 or 3 messages in, all of a sudden he's sending like entire paragraphs of like, stuff about, oh, the Air Force does this. And he's like, I know, the Navy, I know your Navy, because like Air Force shit, but the Air Force does cool stuff too, but also it's dumb, but whatever.
Yeah, no, he's a great guy, man. We were stationed together in England, so that's where we met. And then we lost touch, because I got out of the military and then just didn't really keep in contact with too many people. I don't think 2003, I don't think Facebook wasn't around, was it? I don't know. If it was, I didn't have it. Maybe MySpace, I don't know. But,
I know Facebook existed in 2009 because I had this really weird encounter with this girl when I was leaving Camp Lejeune, driving through Tennessee, and she reached out to me through Facebook. That's the only reason I remember it.
Right. Yeah, so I don't know how so I lost contact with everyone pretty much that I was stationed with for a while, unless I had their numbers. And then Phoenix, I didn't talk to him for, I don't know. It'd been a couple of years. And then somehow we got back in contact, and then I ended up studying abroad in England, and he was stationed back in England. So we like connected again, and I was like, oh, what a trip, dude. There was 2 bases right next to each other. There was Mildenhall and Lakenheath, and he was stationed. We were stationed at Mildenhall together, but then this time he was at Lakenheath. So I'm studying abroad with all these like, college kids, and I was like, dude, this like sucks because I'm like older than all of them, and like they just want to go clubbing, and like I was trying to fit in the best I could, and hold my own with these guys, but I really just wanted to be on base and hanging out with my old bros, So there was 2 or 3 guys that I used to be stationed with. They're stationed at this base again. So every weekend I would just get on a train and take off and go down to go up to Mildenhall or Lakenheath. It was really cool. But anyway,
was that for your undergrad?
Yeah. So I was going to university.
Business?
Yeah. So that was international relations. So I was at University of San Diego, was majoring in international relations, and went through a divorce, and so I was traveling back and forth between Pasadena and San Diego like multiple times a week. And I was like, dude, I just can't do this. This just isn't going to work. And so I didn't know what I was going to do. I had a job and I was making great money, so I was like, I don't really need my degree. It just kind of was a social achievement type of thing.
Yep.
And then someone told me I had blew off my GI Bill like completely. Like I was underwater basket weaving, just taking like stupid classes that I didn't like need at all, didn't have any direction. Anyway, someone told me about Voc Rehab. They're like, dude, you should check into Voc Rehab.
Yep.
I mean, dude, you've had 6 back surgeries, you're definitely disabled, blah, blah, blah. So I was like, all right, cool, I'll check it out. So I went and talked to some lady, and she was like, yeah, well, you're approved. Like, you can go to school again. And I'm like,
what do you want to be?
Yeah, right. So I had to like do this little thing where you talk about like the things you want to do, like an aptitude test and whatnot. And it just so happened, that there was a university right next to our house, and it was a private university, Laverne. So I had to give up a lot of credits and like kind of almost start over. But I was like, that's cool. I love school. So I was like, yeah, let's do it. So I was working full time, going to school full time, and finished my degree in business business administration.
Nice.
So it'd be nice to say, yeah, it was my master's, bro, but it wasn't just a bachelor's. It only took me 20 years to do, but I did it. It's done. But yeah, if not for that, and that's one of the things I did this thing yesterday with the Jubilee Media, where they do this thing called Spectrum, and they bring people from all these different walks of life. So like the veteran community, the Muslim community.
I'm nodding along.
Yeah. The Muslim community, the veteran community, gays, Christians, whatever. And then they ask you these like questions, and then you have like lines that you stand on, whether you agree, disagree.
Oh, yeah.
Strongly.
Yeah.
So it's really interesting. It's fascinating. And
lines that you actually stand on with your feet.
Yeah. So you pick like whichever. Once they say you're like all standing in a single file line, and then they give you the prompt, and then everyone goes to their line based on how you feel, and it's all from a personal experience. And so I was doing that yesterday, and one of the things we talked about was like the benefits for veterans, and I was like, man, I tell you what, dude, like if it wasn't for being a veteran, like I probably wouldn't have my degree. I probably wouldn't own this house, like where else can you go where it's like you have 20% down? Like people can't save that kind of money, especially not in California. When your houses are $600,000+, it's like you're gonna save $120,000. Like that's gonna take you forever with like bills and life. I mean, it's tough, So yeah, the VA loan was amazing, and then going to school, like I would never have my degree if it wasn't for being a veteran. So I was pumped on it.
Yeah, people talk about it's expensive to go to school now, or it's hard to go to school, but like 50 years ago, for like guys like us, from what I gather from your background, you come from a low class. It was impossible.
Yeah.
It wasn't just hard. So I'm very grateful for the opportunities that we do have now. Could it be better? Maybe. I don't know, but yeah.
No, it's a great opportunity, because I think like my wife's grandfather, when he was going to college, he was working for, I believe, the gas company, and he was like moving up the ladder, in the corporate side of the house. And so what he would do was he would go and work for however long, and then he would take a semester, or he would take like time off of work, go like save enough money, go back to school, take a semester. Then he'd run out of money, and then, okay, cool, I got to go back to work, make some more money, quit his job. And he just kept doing that until his degree was paid off. And so, like, the grittiness of dudes back in the day and women back in the day was just completely different, I think, than it is now. And that's kind of where I differed on a lot of the topics yesterday. Was like it seemed like there was a shift more toward like, oh, we deserve more as veterans. Or like we should have more resources available to us. Mm-hmm. And my stance on it was like the resources are there. You just have to look for them.
Yeah.
And I think there's a difference when you're in the military, right? Everything's pretty much handed to you. You have your appointments set for you.
Well, it's directed.
Yeah, for sure. Directed is probably, definitely a better word. Everything's directed. You're kind of... there's not really, you don't really need to think too much. You know what I mean? Things are kind of in order for you. And when you get out, I think that expectation is still there for a lot of people. And so they get out and they're like, oh, well, how do I figure this out? And granted, the stuff is confusing. To try and get through the VA system and try to figure out all the things, it is very confusing. But all it takes for me, like, really is I've just reached out to a bunch of different veterans. There's a lot of things I still don't know, but like, a lot of things that I have figured out have been just from reaching out to other people and being like, hey man, what's the deal with this? Like, how do I do that? How do I do this? Oh, let me tell you, like, you fill out this form, you do this, you do that. Because people have already been through it,
And so, Google, man. There's so much on Google.
For sure.
It's
so,
funny.
Man, I want to go into your story. Enough about me, dude. I keep talking. I've done this a couple times where I've been on the podcast and I'll re-listen to it. I'm like, dude, I talked way too much. Like this, it wasn't about me.
Well, I got to be honest, because I kind of trapped you, because I'm, the ones that I've listened to. I mean, I've loved every single one. Remy and fucking Pat Mack. Who did I just do? Was it Jay, the ATF guy?
Yeah, dude, Jay Dobbins.
Yeah. So, but I'm always left a little bit like, I want to hear a little more from Josh. Like,
a lot of people have said that, man. A lot of people have said that. People have asked me, when am I going to share my backstory? I mean, I talk about it a little bit in bits and pieces of the podcast, but I'm working with a spiritual coach right now, actually, one-on-one, and I just went to a men's retreat, and he was the one that led it.
What's that like?
It's amazing. It's opened my eyes.
So it's not like it's traditional therapy.
No, it's not. It's untraditional or non-traditional therapy. It's more like owning my edges, doing a lot of shadow work, really getting to the bottom, the core of the issues that I have, like really peeling the onion, essentially. Yeah. And stepping into like my power, like as a man, as a confident man, and like letting go of like old stories that don't serve me anymore.
Hold up, that's toxic.
Right. So it's been a journey, man. I went to this retreat not thinking, just being like, man, I don't know what this is gonna be like. I was nervous. I didn't feel like I was gonna fit in at all. Just because of my background and kind of the mindset that I have. I didn't think I was going to fit in with any of the guys that were going to be going there. And it was, to the contrary, man, I was blown away. like completely blown away. And I think the biggest thing that blew me away was the fact that I was so welcome. Like everyone there was so welcome to come as you are and be your authentic self and just drop the shield, drop your mask that you're wearing. Because I think most of us are. You put a mask on in front of you, and you don't want people to see the real you because that's dangerous and that's vulnerable. So for me, it was really interesting to be able to like let that go and kind of just be real and raw and authentic. So
it's funny you mentioned the mask. I had a friend who recently told me something I thought was like really interesting on that perspective. So this is at Stanford. He does drag in his spare time, and he was telling me, everywhere we go, every single person does drag, because all it is impersonating a different life. You have your school drag, you have your work drag, you have your house drag, you have your go out to the bars drag.
Yeah.
And you impersonate this body or this other self that is the one that supposedly belongs or fits there, just to become one with the crowd.
I would agree. I would agree completely, actually. I mean, I think that there's different degrees to how we're doing it.
Of course, now everyone does the makeup and the hair and the skirts.
Yeah. There's degrees to these things. But it's funny, man. I've become so much more open to those kinds of things. Like, if you would have told me that like even a month ago, I'd have been like, what, dude?
Yeah.
But I can see it, man. I'm starting to open my eyes to a lot more things. And it's funny coming from the veteran community and being surrounded with that for a large majority of my life. That stuff really wasn't accepted at all, dude. Like, it's very, very closed and rigid, and I just didn't want to be that way anymore. I was like, dude, I just don't want to be like that. I can still be tough. I can still be like a gritty dude that gets things done and gets after it, but I don't need to be a fake hard person all the time. You know what I mean? Because I found myself doing that a lot, where I would be. It was my protection from being like letting people in. It's like growing up was a little challenging, and I had to navigate certain things, and that was like my survival mechanism, was to just be tough and be hard and rigid and just wound tight, like big time. And that never left me. So like as I get into adulthood, it's like
sounds like a common theme on a lot of your guests.
Oh, for sure, man. For sure. And I think there's going to be a big shift, in my opinion, of the direction of the podcast, the questions on the podcast that I ask, because my mind is being opened up to a lot more things. Like even doing that thing yesterday, it's funny. I was nervous after the retreat. I was very nervous about getting back into podcasting, like go back into doing it. Just because the trajectory I had been on was like, man, like I'm like in the veteran community, and it's been great. It's been awesome. But I don't know how like my new thoughts and way of thinking is going to be accepted, or if it is. And am I okay with that? Is it cool? Like, hopefully some people like get something from it. If they don't, that sucks. But I was really nervous and kind of like apprehensive, and my tank was just empty. I just didn't have much left to like give in that arena, if that makes any sense. So I just needed a break from it all. I was like, I just need a break. I'm not going to travel anymore. I'm just going to chill with my family and just relax for a minute. Because I was getting burned, just like traveling so much. And it's funny.
Is this your main thing? Like, you just do the podcast?
That's it. So after my last back surgery, the doctors told me that I would never work again, just because I was number 6, and it was pretty extensive. And so I had to apply for Social Security as part of the requirement for my long-term disability, and it was approved, which even my attorney was shocked. They hired an attorney for me, and she was like, yeah, at your age, like, chances are they're not going to approve this. But for whatever reason, the judge like really liked me and was like, hey, I'm going to send you out for more testing. And so he sent me out to do a nerve conduction test on my legs, and it came back.
Is that where they put the pins in you?
Yeah.
Yeah, they did that on my arm.
It's pretty painful, man. I didn't like it at all.
Yep.
So he did that, and I forget what it's called, but anyway, it came back that, yeah, my nerves were pretty much shot in my legs. So no feeling, like my feet are pretty much numb all the time. And it goes from being like burning, stabbing pain, shooting pain, to not feeling them at all, to don't really notice. And now it's at the point now where I'm like, I deal with it every day, that I just don't really pay attention to it. I don't pay too much mind to it. So I'm just like, yeah, that's fine.
If you don't mind me asking, what was the injury or event that started it?
I wish I could tell you that, man.
It was just
I don't know.
Spiral out of control?
Yeah. So like in the military is where it got jacked up, and we were doing some training exercises or whatever, and I I remember tweaking it really bad, and I was like, man, like what is wrong with my back? And I couldn't like even driving. I kept like arching my back, and it was like that was the only thing that would like alleviate some of that pressure and the pain. I was like, man, where's this coming from? I don't know. So I kept working. I was a cop, so I was like standing on gates and running in combat boots and just doing stupid stuff. And I don't remember at what point I went to the physical therapist or went to the doctor, and they're like, oh, you have a strained back. That's all they said. Right. And so I was like, oh, okay, fine. The Motrin, the
change
standard.
Your socks.
Right, change your socks. Here's some Motrin, drink some water, press on. So I ended up getting a medical discharge. And when I got out, I didn't know, again, like most veterans, like I didn't know like what the VA system even was. I had no clue how it worked. I didn't know anything. So I didn't know that I could have gone and got an MRI at the VA. I had no clue. So what I did was I went straight to school. Well, first I was a bodyguard for strippers. I was driving strippers around. That was my first job in the military. And it was actually a pretty cool job.
I bet.
Being a young guy, just driving strippers around. It was fantastic. But anyway, I went to school and got my EMT certification, became an EMT. And then I waited 3 months after that and then had an MRI because I thought I had to like have insurance to get an MRI. I didn't know I could do it at the VA. So they did the MRI and they're like, yeah, you have 4 herniated discs. Like, completely herniated. Like, we don't know how you're walking. And I was like, well, with a lot of pain. So I was juicing a bunch of like Advil like every day, like 20 plus Advil a day, like just trying to like get through the day. And then I got into the elevator union and started like installing elevators and still was like just motoring my way through the day.
Yeah.
And finally it got to the point where I couldn't stand up anymore. Like I couldn't stand up straight, and I was like, man, this is not cool. So I went to the doctor, and they were like, yeah, you need surgery like badly. Like, we need to do it now. And so I had this paperwork to fill out for a neurosurgeon, and I thought like, oh, you fill it out, bring it to your appointment. Well, no, they wanted me to fill. And that was my fault. I guess I didn't read it. They said like, we need this before so they can verify my insurance and all that other good stuff. So they called me and tell me they're canceling my appointment, and I was like, no, you can't. Like, you cannot.
At the VA.
No, this is outside the VA.
Okay.
And I was like, you can't cancel my appointment, please. Like, I'm in so much pain, I can barely walk. Like, please, like, I need this appointment. Like, sorry, our next available is a month away. And I'm like, of course. Oh man. So I call my chiropractor. He tells me about a orthopedic surgeon. I go and see the guy. He looks at the MRI, and mind you, like, the MRI was right after I got out of the military, like 3 months after ish. Mm-hmm. And I had been installing elevators for about a year, and like a lot of things had transpired
since the MRI was taken.
And he didn't do another one. He's like, no, that's good. Like, I already know like kind of what I'm looking at. And again, like being young and just like, oh, okay, I guess you're a doctor,
Right.
And so he opened me up and did some laminectomies and whatnot. And I honestly wanted to do cartwheels out of the hospital. Like, I was so like the pain. Being out of pain for the first time in so long was like, oh my God, it felt so good. I was like, oh, this is amazing. I can feel my legs. They're not like on fire. Like, oh, this is awesome. So I leave the hospital. It's on 4th of July. That was on June 28th. And so on 4th of July, I'm sitting at my aunt's house and I'm having a beer. And all of a sudden my head is like pounding, like the worst headache of my life. And I'm like, huh. And so I was an EMT, so I'm thinking like doing the process of elimination. I was like, this is not possible. I'm taking narcotics. Like, how do I have a headache? And I was like, it can't be just a beer. I had literally one beer. It wasn't like I was like, getting bombed. And so I'm like, man, that's weird. So it's not subsiding. It's not going away. I took another Norco or whatever, and it's not going away. So I was like, okay, I need to go to the ER. So go to the ER. They do a spinal tap. Mind you, I just had back surgery, so you're holding your knees to your chest, and it's like ripping my incision open. Like, it was terrible. So they do the spinal tap. He punctures my spinal cord in the process of doing the spinal tap.
Was it the same doctor?
No, it was the doctor that did it was an orthopedic surgeon, the surgery, and then the doctor that came in to do the spinal tap was a neurologist in the area. And he punctured the spinal cord. It like my body like just jolted, and like I didn't have any control over it. It was like involuntary. Yeah. And so that was a really weird feeling. And so they admitted me that night and were like, oh, you have spinal meningitis. And I'm like, okay. That's weird.
Shit.
So I'm like freaking out. I'm not really getting any answers. And the only reason I knew that that's what happened, that he punctured my spinal cord, was because I read the surgery report from the next surgery. So I had one surgery on the June 28th, and then 15 days later, that neurosurgeon that canceled my appointment came in and did another surgery. And I read his surgery report, and it was like, oh, he had to put like Dura gel or something over the puncture wound in my spinal cord. So yeah, it was pretty bad. So like it was 2 surgeries within 15 days, and then it seemed like I would just go back to work. And I ended up going into the office into management, but I was still like driving a lot. I was jumping into elevator pits, measuring, bending down, doing all these things. And
isn't there like a recovery time, like light duty time?
Yeah, I think I had after that second surgery. I think I was off. I was off for quite a while. I was off for quite a while, and then when I went back to work. I was fine for a little bit, but it seemed like every year I'd have another surgery. Every year it'd be another one and another one and another one. But the thing is I kept going to the same doctors that I was going to initially. Again, young and just not like the brightest, you know. It's like, and it's not a knock on these doctors, because at the end of the day, like they're doing the best that they can, you know, within their abilities. And part of it was my fault. You know, I wasn't in the best shape of my life. I was eating like McDonald's every day and drinking a bottle of white Zinfandel, you know. And I was just not doing my body any favors. So it's not all their fault. I would never say that it was. But
nobody's going in there like, let's screw this guy up. Fuck totally. This guy's back.
Yeah. And I have a lot of love actually for the neurosurgeon that did my my second, third, and fourth surgery. Like I have a lot of love for him and his family. Like they're just really good people, and I would never ever disrespect his work or whatever. I just think that with the circumstances, I should have went outside and been like, okay, who's the best of the best? Who's the best orthopedic surgeon? Who's the best neurosurgeon that can try and fix this and right away, so I don't have to keep going through this? And so finally, that's what I did. After my fifth surgery, they fused me. I was fused in straight back, so I had no curvature in my spine. Blah blah blah. And then they ended up doing the sixth surgery. I went to Cedars-Sinai, so I found like the best of the best, and went to Cedars-Sinai. Amazing surgeon, amazing person, and so he did the surgery. They went through my back, took all the old hardware out, sawed through the old fusion, and then did an osteotomy. So they took pieces of my spine out, and then temporarily closed me up, flipped me over onto my back, opened my stomach, inserted 3 wedges in 3 different spaces to give me like the curvature of my spine that I should have had.
Wow. And
then put like cages in, you know, to like keep those wedges like in place. Sewed me back up, flipped me over on my stomach, opened my back up again, put 2 rods, I believe 10 screws, and in place to hold the fusion in place, and sewed me up. So yeah, it was like a 12-hour operation.
That's crazy.
Yeah, man. So I did it without like any pain pills after. In the hospital, I took the pain pills they gave me, but then when I left and came home, I didn't take any pain pills or anything.
Do you smoke weed?
No, I mean I do now periodically. It's like hit and miss. Like I'm like I have a love-hate relationship with a lot of things. You know, like coffee is one of them. You know, like I drink coffee, and then I'll drink it for like a couple months straight, and then I'm just like, I'll have like the worst anxiety attack from it. You know, I get real jittery and shaky and sweaty, and I just don't like the feeling. So I just stopped drinking it completely. I just go, I'm like, no, I'm done with coffee, and I just don't drink it for a couple months. I'm like, man, I'm really tired. I need some coffee. So I go back and forth. Same thing with weed. Like and
it feels better too once you've been off it for a while. It's a little more gratifying.
Yeah, for sure. And same thing with weed. I don't. I'm a proponent of it. I really believe that it helps a lot of people, and I think it's way healthier than taking OxyContin, methadone, fentanyl, and all these other crazy opiates. But it's tough for me because like with all the I have 4 kids and trying to navigate being a dad, and like, we'll wait till the kids go to sleep, and then then I can smoke and get some relief or whatever. It does help with the pain and the mental anguish of being in pain all day. But I do get a little like nervous and paranoid about like, oh dude, what if there's like an emergency right now? I'm like, I need to like be on my A game, and I'm stoned out of my mind. So it kind of like I toy around with that a little bit, and I'm like, I just don't think it's a good idea. So that's why it's hit and miss. Every once in a while I'll be like, I'm gonna smoke tonight. I feel cool. It's not a big deal. And my wife will be on point, so it'll be like, all right, cool.
You have the watch. Take over.
You're on watch tonight. If someone breaks into the house, it's all you. I'll be in the kitchen eating some Doritos. Yeah. So yeah, man. So that's the deal. There's no specific injury. It was just a wear and tear, man. And then
that sucks.
Yeah, surgery after surgery. And so I wanted to share. That's how the podcast started, though. That's
Yeah, I remember you telling me.
It seems like that's like things just keep happening, like to show me like that I'm on either the right track or I need to change course. And like I said, going to that retreat and then coming back and being like, man, I'm a little drained. I don't know like if I can keep doing this the way that it's been going. Like all the traveling, it's very expensive. I don't have any sponsors, and like it's a lot, you know. Being away from my kids and my wife just wasn't cool. And so yeah, I just was like, dude, I don't know what I'm gonna do. And then all of a sudden, like I do a podcast with this guy, Austin Legg in Idaho, Boise. And I was nervous about going. I was like, I don't know how this is gonna go. And he just opened up and shared his story with me. And like we were both in tears like during the podcast. And
Was that like, the last one?
I haven't released it yet.
Posted.
No, I haven't posted yet. The one I just posted today was Ben Mookie. Benjamin Thomas. His nickname is Mookie. Anyway, doing that podcast with Austin was like, man, that was like a breath of fresh air, because I was not expecting it, like him to open up about his story as much as he did. And it just made me feel like it hit me in the feels big time, you know? And that's kind of been my mission, like moving forward, is like, I want to feel more than I think, you know? I want to like let my feelings teach me like things, you know? Like where it's like, how do I feel about this? You know, like am I following my intuition or just doing stuff for my ego? I don't know. So that was a good one to come back to. And then I did another one with a guy named Pete Turner. Same thing. We were talking about leaving the world a better place, kind of my jam, you know?
Right.
And then I did another one with this guy named Larry Broughton the other day on Friday, and I was blown away. I was like, wow.
Is that the real estate guy?
Yeah, so like hotelier, like owns all kinds of like hotels and just killing it, you know, but was willing to like own his story, you know, the mistakes that he's made, the failures that he's had to get him to where he is today. And he talked a lot about how men in this world especially are missing like having like a good mentor. They're missing doing men's work and really like owning some of their stuff, you know, to bring the best self forward, you know. I think a lot of people just get stuck in a rut, you know. It's like, oh, I go to work, I do this, I do that, whether it be military or not. And they're never really addressing like any of the core of their issues, you know. And I just wanted to let that all go in my life. You know, I have a lot of trauma, and I don't want to like allow it, because it was really like damaging my relationships. It was damaging like my relationship with my kids, with my wife, and everything else, because I wasn't. I explained to someone the other day. It was like I would go to my wife and I would communicate with her from that injured, wounded, scared child. I wasn't talking to her from the confident, empowered man. I was always talking to her from the wounded child. She would say something to me, and it's like, ugh. And I would be wounded, so I would like snap back, and it just wasn't cool, you know. And I wasn't honoring her the way that I should. I had a false idea of masculinity. I thought, you know, it's I pound my chest and I tell her what time it is, and I'm the king of this castle and this and that. And at the end of the day, when you break that all down, that was just me being extremely insecure. And so I needed to verbalize like that I was the man in the house. I needed to verbalize to her that I was the shot caller and like this and that. When in actuality, like, she knows that I am. I don't need to tell her that. She knows I'm the man of the house.
You have to tell someone like, hey, I'm really cool.
Yeah, you're right. Like, and she wasn't trying to take any power from me at all. You know what I mean? Like, if anything, she was just patiently waiting for me to step my game up, you know, and just be like, no, I know that you're not in your power right now. And when you are, like, everyone will know.
It's cool.
Yeah, it's cool. So, yeah, it's been a cool like journey, and it's been really cool to see the shift just in our relationship, man. It's completely different, you know. I don't now when I get frustrated or upset, it's like I ask myself before I respond, like, where is this frustration coming from? Why does that bother me? Like, why am I like snapping back about this? Like, what else is going on with me, you know? And it takes a lot of work, man. It takes a lot of like honesty with yourself to be like, okay, where's that coming from? And a lot of people, oh, that's airy fairy bullshit, fuck that, you know. It's like, and I'm just not there anymore, you know. Like I'm ready to like step up, you know, and really own a lot of that stuff. So that's it, man. That's my story. Part of it. So what about you, man? Let's hear your story. It's your backstory.
All right, where do beginnings start?
So there your dad was with your mom.
All right.
It was a Sunday evening.
So. Yeah, I mean, according to them, it was a rooftop on, Muskie, Bangladesh. because out of respect for my parents, I can't go into too much detail. Not about that, the rooftop. But
I was going to say, well, yeah, dude.
No, but so they were in. I'm being very generous here when I call it a missionary group.
Yeah.
They met in India/Bangladesh.
Nice.
My dad, when he was my age and a little younger, I'm 31. He hitchhiked across Europe a couple times. It was a lot easier to do back then.
Totally.
And made his way down to India. And he was telling me he was going through Pakistan, and tribesmen were around with bandoliers and just working odd jobs, sometimes begging, just traveling though. That was the dream.
Yeah.
And he ended up in Bangladesh, joined this missionary group. My mom in Greece gets people from the group approach her, and they're like, hey, and Greece is Christian Orthodox. Okay. So they come to her with like, hey, let's tell you about Jesus. She says, I'm good. But they show her this brochure, and this guy had written this article about what it's like to be witnessing and serving the Lord in Bangladesh with this group.
Okay.
And she's like, well, I kind of like this writing. And there's a picture. She's like, I kind of like this guy. Who's this guy? And they're like, well, you can meet him if you come to Bangladesh. She's 19. She's like, all right, that sounds great.
That's awesome. It's a cool story, man.
So she goes and works some odd jobs. She's like working in my grandfather's like bakery or something. Saves up money, and this is old traditional Greece. So there's like marriage proposals and why aren't you married yet? She's 19. She's like peace out and stage some kind of escape with her girlfriends covering for her.
Yeah.
Gets to Bangladesh, and I'm getting too detailed there, but yeah. So they meet. They have my older brother. They get married with me in her belly. So, my dad's from Seattle.
Okay.
So I'm kind of a mutt. A lot of people are.
So your mom was from Greece, like she was
from Greece.
Oh wow.
Actual. So they move around. They're still with the group for a while. They move around. They settle down in Greece. I was 8 when I was 8 years old. So then by then we'd lived in probably 9 houses and a camper van. So the last 2 years before that, we were traveling around in a camper van. And I can't say this with a straight face because one of the ways we raised money is we were busking. Are you familiar with the term? Yeah, so busking is when you see like the guys on the sidewalk and they're playing guitar or playing the flute and they have their guitar case, for spare change. So we were doing that, but kind of en masse. So pull up in the camper van, mom gets out. By then I had a younger brother too, so 3 boys dressed kind of matching and cutesy, and one of them's playing guitar, my older brother, and my mom's playing guitar, and we're all singing, these like Christian songs. Yeah. But the fucked up thing is we're singing in English, and this is Italy and Greece, long before the tourist boom, right. And we're expecting people to like give us money.
Yeah.
And I remember this one lady in particular. Again, I must have been like 6, 7 years old. We sing our songs and going through the restaurant, with our hands out, like, hey, what's up? And most people, they give little bits of change, little coins, whatever. This one lady, she just straight up looked over her shoulder at me, flicks her cigarette. She goes, sorry, we didn't like it.
Oh, dude.
Sitting there like, fuck. I go back to, I didn't know the word fuck at the time, but right. I go back to my mom, I'm crying, and I think that's my earliest memory. Like the earliest memory that's a scene where something happened that unfolds. Like there's images, like scattered images, but that's the one that I can actually remember events. So yeah, that was my first exposure to people who weren't my family.
Yeah.
So we settled down in Greece, and now after all this living, before the camper van, we were living in these giant community houses. So it's like anywhere from 150 to 250 people.
So it's like a commune?
Commune.
Yeah.
Kids are separated into age groups.
Do you mind saying what that group is, or would you rather not?
I don't want to name them. but I mean, they were a cult. They were a cult in the purest sense of the word, right? They, in the way that they were closed to like anything outside was considered the system, the world, and carnal, and you're not reading anything besides their literature and the Bible, you know, the version of the Bible that they approve, which is King James. So I'm skipping around now, but
how'd they break out of that? Like when they settled in Greece, were they out of that? Out of the, I'm just gonna call it cult because I don't know what it is, but.
Yeah, it's fine. So I didn't learn this until recently, but the reason we went out in the camper van, right around that time, my dad's mother died of cancer, and so he got his portion of the inheritance. He had has 8 brothers and sisters, big Catholic family. So he gets his little portion of the inheritance, which was pretty substantial. She did okay. And of course the cult group takes the majority of it because it's tithe, right? You know, you got to contribute to the Lord's work. But with what he has left, and my understanding from both their sides, I'm skipping around a little bit here, but they both kind of knew things were getting fishy. There were reports of children being whatever, and they each knew that they wanted out, but they're living in this commune. There's no privacy. There's no way to have that conversation,
right.
And there's no communication besides snail mail and call and house lines. And the group had this tendency where if they caught wind of like insubordination, they would separate families. So dad and a kid here, mom and a kid there, and it's kind of this like probationary thing. You can't do anything because you can't reach them without the permission of the house elders.
Wow.
So they were both kind of scared of that, and so this inheritance thing happens, and my dad takes the portion that he had left and buys this camper van, and it's this old, still in great shape, like diesel white delivery van that was already converted with, had a little hump on the top for the bed that folds down, little kitchen, little fridge, and he tells the elders, right? That's what they call them, elders, shepherds. Right?
I shouldn't laugh, dude, but
no, that's
silly.
The best. The purest comedy is like the ugliest stories, right?
It's true.
So he convinced them. He's like, hey, my calling is, I can't say this with a straight face, to me now, right? It just seems like just using the language. He's like, hey, I feel that my calling is to hit the road and witness to people, out further away from these centers of communes, right? These centers of activity. And they're like, all right, sure, that seems legit. Just make sure you keep tithing. And so we take off, and it's my parents, my older brother, my younger brother, and me, and we're traipsing around, minstrelling, and we did that for
gypsies, dude.
Gypsies, exactly. That's exactly what we were. But so that was our daring escape. It was the Von Trapps, right? Around singing. That was our daring escape. But I'm gonna flash forward a little bit. We weren't actually out for a long time, and I didn't actually find out that they left intentionally. I thought it was just like, hey, we're still this thing. We still believe all this stuff. We're just going somewhere else.
We're gonna do some missionary stuff, and
yeah. Because even for them, and I used to resent them a lot, but I'm really starting to come to terms after seeing how many things I've messed up and been wrong about. Kind of just imagining what it would have been like to be them and how long it would have taken, understandably, to transition into finally being able to tell us boys, yeah, we actually stopped adhering to that, stopped believing in that because we heard this stuff. Like, how do you tell an 8-year-old or a 9-year-old?
Yep. It's crazy how we grow up as adults, and like to this day, I don't really have a relationship, or I don't have a relationship with my mom, and a lot of that was, it's just not a safe thing, you know what I mean? I have kids, and it just doesn't. It's just not a safe thing. So I'm not even entertaining the idea of having one. However, with that being said, I shared with somebody the other day that for the first time ever, I was able to find like compassion for her story. And I was never able to do that before. I was so resentful and so pissed and angry and hurt and all these things, and I was like, you know what? So I started like really thinking deeply about it, like what was she going through? You know what I mean? What was her story? Like what was her upbringing like? Where was she, like what was she exposed to that made her the person that she is today? And so for the first time, I was able to find like compassion, and it was like a weight lifted off of my chest. It's like, I don't need to invite her into my world again. It's like, because that's a boundary that I'm not willing to let down. But I am done holding on to resentment and anger and hurt. Like, it just doesn't serve me. So
who said it? To understand all is to forgive all.
Yeah. I don't know who said it, but that's a great quote. Yeah, totally. I didn't mean to interrupt, but I was just
not at all.
When you're talking about the resentment, because it makes sense to me that you'd be resentful. You know what I mean? Because it's like, you're a kid, dude. These are like your childhood memories, And I had a similar stuff like that in my upbringing. It wasn't a cult; it was just organized religion. But like, they were like gnarly with it, like gnarly. Where it's like, we went from living in a house kind of like the size of the one that we're in now, and having a bunch of animals and this and that, and then my parents wanted to know what it was like to live like God, or Jesus, and so they like decided to sell all of our stuff and move us to Texas, and we lived in a 23-foot travel trailer with my mom, my stepdad,
there you go,
my brother, my sister, my stepbrother, my stepsister, and then 2 dogs on the outside. So
wow.
Yeah, it was
and how old did you say you were?
I think we moved to Texas when I was 10. So, yeah, it was crazy. You go from like having a house, and like they asked us, saying like, "Oh, do you guys want to move to Texas?" And all of us said no. Like, no, we don't want to go.
Well,
guess
too
what?
bad.
That's where we're going. So we ended up going, and I met a lot of really good friends while I was there. So it wasn't all bad. I can find silver linings in anything. But as a kid, 10-year-old kid, when you're trying to find yourself, find your way in the world, it was tough, because being in a travel, we have school buses there, so they're picking you up in front of your travel trailer, and so you imagine how that went down.
Right. Yep.
And I never really understood, even like into like adulthood, like, dude, why was I so angry? But think about it, like, kids are brutal. Kids are brutal, dude. They just say the most hurtful shit.
What were the demographics of your school?
So that in Texas, was predominantly Mexican. So I was a white kid,
living in a trailer.
Yeah, in a predominantly Mexican neighborhood. My stepdad was Mexican, and his last name was Rodriguez. And my mom, I'm not sure part of my story. See, you got me talking, bro. I want to share my story, dude. So I wanted to live with my father, like, my entire life. Like, I really wanted to be with my father, and I had, I would see him every other weekend, and it was just, I never wanted to come back to my mom's. I was like, I never had a connection with my mom, and I didn't know why or how or what as a kid. I couldn't figure it out, but there was never, looking as far back as I can remember, I never had that connection with her. It wasn't like I miss my mom, or I want to hug my mom. There was no love. There was no affection. There was none of that.
Yeah.
And my dad was, he's not a bad guy, but he's just very mellow and chill. Like, all right, man, cool. He just did a lot of acid in the 60s.
This is your dad or your stepdad?
This is my father.
Okay.
And I just felt more comfortable with him. I don't know why. I think it's maybe because I was a boy and I just wanted my dad to want me, type of thing, And so I was like, I'm gonna go live with him when I'm 12. I'm out of here. I'm going to live with my dad.
Where was he?
He was at this time, I was living in San Bernardino, which is like maybe 15 miles away from here, and then he was living maybe a total of like 40 miles away or something like that. 35 miles away. He was in Claremont, I think, at the time. And so I was like, I'm gonna go live with my dad, and it was gonna be arranged and blah blah blah. And then all of a sudden we moved to Texas. Shocker. And so then my
coincidence.
Yeah, right. And then my mom took us to this attorney, and I still remember his name, Michael Schulman, in Texas. I don't know how I just remembered that. That's really weird. So anyway, we went to see Michael Schulman, and he started filling out adoption papers for my stepdad to adopt us. And my father was like, no way. Like, I'm not agreeing to that.
As opposed to, like, what was the arrangement until then?
The arrangement was, like, I would see my
Was it like
father,
shared custody or something?
Well, it was every other weekend. So I think that was the custody arrangement, was every other weekend. So that's pretty much when I saw him, you know?
So if you get adopted, does that negate?
That means that he doesn't see me, has no financial responsibility, no nothing. Like, just done. So he was like, no, I'm not doing that. And so he wouldn't sign the papers. And so what they did was they put a document in the newspaper that constituted his signature. So they put like an ad in the paper saying that, oh, in this day, Mr. Rodriguez is going to adopt so-and-so and so-and-so, whatever. And then they didn't need his signature. They were able to do it anyway.
Because they published it in the newspaper?
Yeah. So I don't know the ins and the outs of that. And again, this happened when I was like 10 or 11. So I don't know. Maybe it's something I should look into, you know, and be like, was that even legit? I don't even know. You know? Because, I mean, again, it's coming from my mom. So a lot of times there was a lot of deception, a lot of lying, a lot of like manipulating, and a lot of things I'm just finding out now as a 37-year-old dude, like figuring things, piecing it all together, and being like, oh shit,
yeah,
this is all part of your plan. So yeah, she said that we were adopted. I believed it. I was like, okay, I guess we are. She changed our last names, so now I'm a blonde-haired, blue-eyed kid in a predominantly Mexican neighborhood with the last name Rodriguez. As you can imagine, that probably didn't go over very well.
Yep.
So, and again, these are things that I'm putting together now. Like, wow, no wonder I was so angry. You know, I look at like pictures of those from those years. I didn't smile. I just wasn't happy. And I remember when I came back to California, I moved in with my grandma, my mom's mom, and she raised me from there on out. And I remember her telling me there was like a cat walking by, and I was like, I want to kill that cat. I hate cats. And she was like, why are you so angry? And I remember that conversation. We were going for a walk. You know, whenever I was really mad or I wanted to talk, I'd be like, hey, can we go for a walk? And then we'd have our, you know, talks or whatever. And I remember then
you guys were
like,
close, huh?
Oh.
With your grandmother?
Unbelievably close. Like, she was hands down like my person, for sure. And always was. Even when we moved, she was the one that would like send, like, we were there with my stepdad's family, and they weren't bad people, but they just weren't like my family, you know? So like, we always felt like outsiders. We were like the outcast, you know? We weren't part of his family at all. And so on Christmas, we would be waiting in front of our travel trailer, you know, for the UPS to come, you know, because we knew like Meme, my grandma, was going to send us like a big old package and whatever, and it always made us feel like we were at home, you know? And so yeah, when I came back from Texas and moved back to California.
This is your grandmother on whose side?
My mom's side. It's my mom's mom. And yeah, so I ended up staying with her, and I never left. And it was she was an amazing lady. Welcome Macy to the show.
Hi, Macy.
She should be on her place right now, but she's only 7 months, so I'm giving her a little pass right now.
Yeah, she's all right.
Yeah, she's good. So anyway, I don't even know how we got off on that tangent, dude. I think I was thinking
growing up in trailers.
Yeah, growing up in trailers. Yeah. So
vans.
it was quite the experience, you know. And I think the shittiest part, which is funny to me when I think about it, is that in Texas, like when it rains, it gets like the mud is like gumbo. It's like it sticks to your feet. Like you just keep getting taller. Like it doesn't fall off. You know, it's very sticky. It's like clay and whatever. So we would get mud all over our clothes. Our shoes, and we'd go inside the travel trailer and it would get everywhere all over the trailer. So we'd go to school not only from a travel trailer, but with like mud all over our shit, you know? Macy, you are ridiculous.
Little want some attention.
Yeah, I'm gonna put her back in our place real quick. Hold on.
All right.
Macy, come here.
All right, girl.
Come on, bud. Macy, come on. Macy. edit
All
that
right.
part out.
Back at it.
Yeah, I clapped because I want him to. He'll see the spike. And then,
Okay.
and I would say, hey, that part at 49 minutes he can take out.
Great.
When you getting up. Anyway, so back to where travel trailers, and I want to get back to your story. So
Yeah.
you guys, your parents, which was mighty brave, man, to take the kids out of that, take you guys out of that, and then try and figure it out.
Yeah.
How long have they been part of that?
My dad had been with them for, I want to say 10 years.
Wow.
But it's still kind of hard sometimes to get, like the story, the details from him.
It's real information.
Yeah, he sometimes he has a hard time talking about it.
Do you think he's like embarrassed by it, or do you think he's like?
No, I think he's. I guess I don't know if traumatized is exactly the right word, but
Makes sense.
maybe still trying to unpack it and process his own. I don't want to speak for him.
Yeah, I get it.
Why it would be difficult, but yeah.
Yeah. So then what happens? So you guys get in the
So we
motorhome, and then
so we end up in Greece. We stay in a couple houses. So now we're probably at 12 or 13 different places, and we settle down in Thessaloniki, which is the second largest city after Athens.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what's funny when people hear, you grew up in Greece, they're thinking, what are they thinking? Mykonos and Mamma Mia cliffs and, little white houses overlooking the beach. And no.
Santorini.
Yeah, exactly. No, this is just dusty, dilapidated buildings. Not super shitty, just, blocky concrete structures with square openings. Everything is concrete. Parking lots, sidewalks, kids playing soccer in the alley. So I go to my first day of school, second grade, and we'd been homeschooled until then, in English. So I go to my first day of school, second grade. I should have been in third grade. I was a little old. But my mom was like, hey, you need some time to catch up, because I didn't speak Greek.
Right.
So is that... Okay. Yeah, so I didn't speak Greek. So I show up, first day of class, and, we're collecting our books, and the desks, the way they are in Greece, it's not like these individual little desk attached to a chair like they have here. It's these kind of metal frame things, these rectangles, and these metal chairs, and they're meant for two. So each desk is meant for two. You pull two chairs up to it, right? And I find one that's completely empty and sit down by myself. I don't know anybody. I don't know how to have conversations with people who aren't my family.
And do you speak any Greek at this point?
I knew probably about 17 words.
Okay.
So
You
like
speak it fluently now?
yeah,
Yeah.
because I graduated high school there.
Oh yeah, shit.
So this girl comes up to me, and she goes, and most of the stuff I don't understand, but I get that she's like, hey, do you want a friend? And I'm like, fuck yeah, and I couldn't speak, and I should say, like, at the time, I'm this skinny little kid with glasses and a bowl cut that looks like you cut it with a tin can. Right? I'm just like, yeah, I want a friend. So she runs off and, gets the teacher. And the teacher comes back. She's like, you want a friend? I'm like, yeah. Is that how this works? She's going to find someone to sit at my desk and be my friend. And, I'm looking around like, all right, who's it going to be? Is it that kid there? Or, the one with the Spider-Man backpack, whatever. Like, he seems cool. And the teacher comes back and gives me 2 pieces of paper. And I didn't find out until I went home and told my mom that the Greek words philo and philos sound almost exactly the same.
Just if you want paper.
Yep.
Wow.
One means paper
You're
and one
all
means
excited,
friend.
man. That sucks, dude.
So I'm saying, like, oh my God, I'm trying not to cry. I don't know. Maybe I did. I don't know. And that was just, that's day one. And that's just this little, like, all right, this is what it's going to be like.
Yeah.
And so for the first couple of years, I can't really speak well to the other kids. I'm still figuring out. And so I don't really make friends. I had a couple playmates. But then in 4th grade, this is something that I didn't pay any significance to this, and I'd completely forgotten about it until I talked about it with a therapist while I was in the Navy, a counselor. And so it was, I can't remember the exact year. I've looked it up. So I think it was 2000, no. Whatever year the NATO was bombing Kosovo.
Probably like 98.
Yeah, 97, 98. Whatever it was. I was in 4th grade. And again, kids are mean. And the idea was, here's this kid who's American, right? Even though I'd never lived in America. But I wasn't Greek, so it's like, what are you? Well, I don't know. I guess I'm American, right? And so they're like, why is your country dropping bombs? Why is Clinton doing this? Why is whatever? And, this happens for a while, and it's frustrating. It's annoying. I don't know what to say. I still can't speak very well. And I had loose connections at the time. With my relatives back in the States. They'd send Christmas cards, maybe like $5 on my birthday. But I walk out of school one afternoon, and the school had put up this wallpaper, this white wallpaper right outside the main door. And the kids had these markers, and they were drawing anti-war slogans, like "Make love, not war," like drawing little peace signs and little hearts, and save the children. And it's all great. Yeah. But then that day, I walk out, and I see that somebody wrote right smack in the middle of this white wallpaper, "Fuck America, fuck USA." And again, my connections with it were loose. Like, it was whatever. But I saw that, and in that moment, I was like, that's my dad that they're saying it about. That's all my relatives. That's this part of my identity. I'm the only person here who represents this. And obviously I'm like 9 or 10, so these aren't like really well played out thoughts. But sure, emotionally, this is what I was going through. And so I'm like, screw this. And I take a marker and I write a slogan of my own. I write a little thing right under that. And I stand off to the side and, just kind of wait and see what will happen. And sure enough, the next kid who comes out, he's like, "Hey, who wrote 'fuck Greece'?" And I'm standing there, and I should have done nothing, but I wrote it, and I stood there. Kids see it, start calling more kids over. "Oh, Nestor thinks he can do this," or whatever. And there's a push and a shove and a punch and a fight, and next thing I'm running home, and there's like 15 kids chasing me. Home wasn't very far. It was like 2-3 blocks away. Yeah. But the cool thing is, I was like, shit, like, and that wasn't the last. That was the first time that I did stuff like that. And looking back, I could say I got bullied, but it was stuff like that where I usually kind of caused my own problems.
Were you tight with your mom's family in Greece?
Tight, kind of. Yes, in the way that, they loved us, they adored us. My Greek grandfather's name is Nestor. He's who I got my name from. So, he loved me. He loved all of us. But the relationship was like, my brothers and I would visit maybe a weekend a month. And my grandmother, we loved her cooking. She would cook for us. She would make us breakfast, and we'd get like eggs and sausage, and as opposed to the bread and butter that we're used to at home. Okay. So it was this amazing thing. And then here's some change to go play video games. So yeah, that was, I guess, like those little staccatos of like joy in this otherwise, like, I don't want to say horrible. It was just very, and you don't know any better, right? Yeah. You're going around, you think like this is just what school is. You go there, you can't speak the language of your thoughts. You don't really know how to make friends. You don't know how to talk to people. you get in fights, and you just assume like that is what school is like and supposed to be like.
Yeah.
So we moved again between 9th and 10th grade. And things were getting a little better. My parents had jobs, and by now they've officially told us, hey, we're separated from the group, from the cult.
Were you keeping in contact with any of the kids from the group up until this
No.
point?
No. Because they, my parents were and are still in contact with some other members. And sometimes we'd go visit them, and so we'd interact with them sometimes, but it wasn't like, hey, we're friends, let's call each other or anything.
Got it.
And so I go to high school. It's a lot of the same stuff. So we move outside the city after 9th grade, and excuse me. And this was kind of a big turning point for me this summer between 9th and 10th grade, because it kind of culminated. One of my friends from my old school invites me out to his family's beach house for a week or two. And while I'm there, I meet this girl, and I don't remember I can't picture her face, but I remember thinking she was beautiful, brown hair, green eyes. And I remember kind of interacting with her, feeling really good about it. We exchanged numbers, hung out on the beach the day that we met, maybe smoked a cigarette together. And so I'm thinking like, wow, I'm leaving this old life behind, moved to a new house, things are changing. I'm starting Taekwondo, nobody will mess with me again. And now I meet this girl, and she's amazing. And I should clarify, this is like after the first meeting, right? This all happens within a week. And I'm texting her, kind of trying to hang out again, and responses are a little sporadic, or they get more sporadic. And finally, it's like my 5 days are over, staying with my buddy Clown, and it's time to go home. But I'm like, hey, I just really want to see you again, to this girl, like. And so she meets me on the beach, and I'm just like pouring my soul to her, like whatever there was. I'm just, I'm 14, and I think I'm just madly in love with this girl I met 5 days ago, and I'm begging her to meet me on the beach, and we're walking, and I remember her mascara was a little smudged from sweat or salt water or something, and I'm telling her, I start crying, and I'm like, hey, I just really like you, and I just wanted you to know that. And she's like, hey, thank you. And she's like holding her hand up to the sun. It was so bright. She's like, thank you. Let's be friends. And I'm like, yeah, wow, that's great. Let's do that. I'll take that.
Yeah.
And sure enough, as I think we all know, girls say that and don't mean it. So, and probably guys too. It's not a dig on women. So I go back, and now I'm kind of, school starts at my new school. So now I'm kind of integrating into this new environment. Still same kind of social struggles, not as badly.
Are you speaking fluent at this point?
Yeah. Fluent. When I speak Greek, you can tell I have an accent.
Got it.
Which is weird. It's weird that I don't have an accent when I speak in English, but it is my first language.
Can you say a sentence in Greece?
Yeah.
In Greek.
Πήγα το καλοκαίρι στο σπίτι του Clown για να περάσουμε καλά στην παραλία.
What did you say?
We went to Clown's beach house to have a good time at the beach.
Nice.
Yeah. So I'm trying to stay in touch with this girl, and it fizzles out, and eventually I realized that there's nothing, that it's not an actual let's be friends. Like, it's just, I realized what has happened. And when I realized that, and I understood it viscerally, and everything about my school experiences before that, all the the parties that I knew people were going to that I wasn't invited to, all the dating, the fact that other kids had beach houses to go to, they had village houses, they had childhood friends because they lived in the same place for so long, and just it all just kind of came together with that, just culminated in this girl and this rejection. And so I was really into Linkin Park at the time.
Yeah.
And I broke a blade out of my dad's cartridge razor, and I sat alone in my room and blasted Linkin Park and started cutting myself.
Wow. Did you think, like, was going through your mind? Were you thinking, like, I just want it to be over? What were your thoughts? Do you remember?
I don't know. I can look at the scars, and a couple of them do pass over veins, crosswise. And I don't want to say, like, the right way or the wrong way. I don't think I ever thought about that. And there was no Google. It's not like you can be like, what's the, you know what I mean?
Proper way to kill yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, what was going through your mind, though, at the time? Like, were you thinking, like, you were just so down and depressed and just tired, or what?
I think the phrase or the language that was the emotional language was something along the lines of nothing can hurt as bad as what I'm feeling. And I just kind of wanted to test that.
Wow. So who found you?
Oh, I didn't like pass out or anything. I just cut myself. I bled, patched it up. And
so it wasn't deep enough to, like... It
wasn't deep. I mean, I etched her initial onto my forearm on one of them.
Is it still there?
It's still there. Yeah, you can see it right there. It's shaped like a B. That's the Greek letter for V. And there's a couple there.
Yeah.
And I think that summer I was working construction.
Yeah.
So my mom did see it, and she knew. She's not stupid. But I was telling her, I was like, no, I cut myself at the construction site. And she's like, no, you didn't. I'm like, yeah, I did. I'm like, shut up. I'm an angsty teenager. Yeah. So I'm like, get off my case, Mom. Right? But yeah, so that happened a couple times. Maybe it wasn't a super frequent thing. And I just kind of wore long sleeves, covered it up.
Yeah.
And right around that time, also, like I said, we moved to this house that had a gym. And I kind of understood or created this ideation in my mind that if I could be super strong, super tough, then A, I won't get hurt anymore emotionally, and B, people won't be messing with me.
Totally.
Right? So I start lifting weights. I start doing Taekwondo, because nobody messes with you when you do Taekwondo.
So you can roundhouse
right.
Someone in the face, dude.
Who's the guy in Kickboxer? You know what I'm talking about? The movie Kickboxer.
Yeah, but I don't remember who it is. I remember the movie, though.
God, because we weren't allowed to watch violent movies, but sometimes I snuck one every now and then. And when I saw I think it was Kickboxer, dude's like having people like kick him in his ribs and like hardening his ribs. I was having people do that to me. I was like, yeah.
So I'm a little bit older than you, so I think my jam was No Retreat, No Surrender was one of the movies I watched.
Who's that?
Dude, I couldn't even tell you who the actors are.
Okay.
I just remember the movie, like, he's like obsessed with Bruce Lee, and he keeps getting picked on. So he goes to, like, Bruce Lee's, like, goes to his grave, and then, like, Bruce Lee, like, shows up and, like, starts, like, teaching him martial arts in his basement or something. And he's like, no retreat, no surrender, and he starts doing his martial arts. There was that, and obviously Karate Kid.
What I've thought has always been really interesting about. I've always found this really interesting about martial arts movies is that, and in a way, probably that sort of influence was what gave me this idea that I could go down that path to kind of fix myself. I'm using quotes here. But what martial arts movies do is they try to give this kind of emotional justification for ritual violence. Because what is it, right? You're getting into this ring or this dojo or whatever.
Yeah.
It's rarely like, hey, I'm just some farmer and people are trying to take my daughter, right? It's usually something structured, some offense, somebody hurt somebody did whatever, so that you have an excuse to voluntarily step into this ring and feel really emotionally charged to fight this guy, right? Because it's not enough to say, hey, look, we're humans and there's some really ugly part of ourselves that's still drawn to violence, which is the truth. It's like, no, it's because there was this slight of honor. What the fuck does that mean? Honor. Oh, honor. Oh, you disrespect my dojo. It's like, come on, bro.
It's pretty accurate, dude.
Right?
It's pretty accurate. Yeah. So then what happens? So you go to school, you start like cutting yourself, because, and I get it, man. Like I knew, like, I never did, but I knew people that were cutters, you know, they would cut themselves because it was like an escape from the pain, you know, that they were experiencing emotionally.
Mm-hmm.
And
an expression almost.
Yeah, totally. And I don't know, sometimes, like, I mean, I'm glad I didn't go down that road because I had a lot of emotional stuff that probably could have led me there.
Mm-hmm.
But I lashed out in other ways. I wasn't cutting myself, but I was a knucklehead, you know what I mean?
And in a way, I'm glad that it wasn't drugs.
Yeah.
Like, what if it had been heroin instead? Like, I'm glad all I got was a couple scars on my forearm.
Right. So then how did you go from being, like, in high school and then graduating high school in Greece and then joining the Navy? How did that even happen?
God, so I didn't actually come to America to join the Navy. I came to join the Coast Guard, which is only funny for people who like know what SEALs are and what the Coast Guard, like, kind of what that disparity is. But before that,
we love you, Coast Guard.
Yeah. One love. But before that, like, I remember the moment this happened. So this is like, you know, a year or two after the cutting started. So I'm into the fitness. I'm actually getting a little better. I have this friend. I'm using quotes here because he was a really bad influence, but he was all about death metal and shoplifting and starting fires in abandoned buildings, that kind of stuff, vandalism. We broke into the high school a couple times, just for fun, just to do stuff. But one day, one of our more benign activities was there was this like a theme park in town, and there was this band playing there, and everybody was going. Everybody, all the surrounding towns, everybody was going to this show, and it had a €10 cover charge. And I asked my parents, and they said, "You can go, but I don't have €10. Like, we're getting paid in a week. Like, there's food in the fridge, right? You have clothes, whatever, but I can't give you €10. I don't have €10 for you." Yeah. So I go to the meeting place. I can't remember if I had a cell phone or not, but I still went to meet the guys at the bus stop, and I told them, like, hey, I couldn't get €10. And this guy who was like my friend, he's like, what the fuck? What do you mean you can't get €10? I can, put the change in my pockets together and have €10. But he didn't offer it. Right? So, and I knew right then and there, I was like, you know what? I see how it is. I see where I am. I'm not starving. I'm not in like absolute destitute poverty, but I am low class. Yeah. And they drove off on the bus, and I sat. There's a park right next to that bus stop, and I sat down on the swing set, and I understood my place. And this is what kind of went through my head is, I'd been reading about the Spartans. I think it was that book Gates of Fire, I think. But I read something about how, they're helots, right? They're working class. They weren't citizens. They weren't allowed to vote. They weren't allowed to marry outside their class. They weren't allowed to own property. But there was one way as opposed to like, most slave structures, there was one way for them to break free, and that was to show valor in combat. So I decided, sitting on that swing set, I was like, all right, I have no talents, no business to inherit, no, like, particularly good looking. There's only one way for me to break out of where I am here, and that is to join the military and prove myself in combat.
Did you know, like, about, like, the American military at that point in your life?
Oh, God. I skipped over something. So my dad was always into exercising. Like, I always remember him being super disciplined with what he eats and what he does. And one day he came home from the library with a book called The Navy SEAL Workout. This is in Greece from a U.S. library. Yeah. Old school, like
Nice.
like pyramid push-ups and pull-ups. It was just pull-ups, push-ups, dips, abdominal routine, and run. Right. That's all the workout was. And the intro, it's like a 2-page little intro. This is what Navy SEALs do. And on the front cover is this fucking, shirtless guy, camel pants, climbing the cargo net. And in my mind, I'm like, that dude is like Spider-Man. That dude is a superhero, a real-life superhero. Yeah. That dude definitely does not get hurt.
Yeah.
Nothing gets to him. So I started doing that workout, and I got this idea in my head about, like, Navy SEALs and how cool that would be. But it never occurred to me to go to America. So the first thing that actually occurred to me is to join the Greek military and go to their naval academy. So I was probably in, you would call it freshman, sophomore, my junior year. I start taking my studies super seriously to get the, it's not quite like the SATs, but whatever, to just get grades good enough to go there. And I got rejected. I think my scores were good enough. My physical stuff definitely was. My mom wants me to say it's because of my dual citizenship or because of my eyes, because I had to get PRK, and they're still kind of crossed sometimes. Yeah. But I know that there was a question on their psych test that it said, it's like this true or false thing, or like score 1 to 5 how much you agree with this. And the question said, I believe I've been specially chosen by God. And on the drive back after I'd been rejected, and we were trying to figure out why, I told my mom about this, and she was like, oh, well, you didn't say yes, did you? And I'm like, Mom, for the past 16 years, this is what we've been learning, that we're chosen by God. This is what we've been indoctrinated with, right? She's like, yeah, but it's not something we have to tell everyone. So
maybe a little heads up there, Ma.
So it's funny that we're talking about this, because in that moment, like, a couple things became clear to me. One was like, I have this past that I should kind of be ashamed of. Yep. And the other is that, like, sometimes I need to lie to make my past acceptable to my environment.
Yeah.
So they shut me down, and I graduate high school. I don't really have a plan. I work for a year doing construction, cleaning toilets, working at my uncle's little snack shop. And it was my dad's idea. We watched that movie Guardian with Kevin Costner. Yeah. And he's like, hey, Ness, Coast Guard might be a great fit for you. And he's a pacifist, right? So they're like, hey, they're out there helping people, do some cool stuff, go to America and figure it out. I'm like, you know what? Fuck it, let's go. So we get over there, I have my savings, we fly over, and we'd been talking to the recruiter, and of course the recruiter is in Washington, Seattle. She's like, why is this kid flying all the way from Greece to join the Coast Guard, to enlist? Right? And we were already in touch with her. We get over there, I get my physical, she calls me at my uncle's house, and she's like, hey, I'm really sorry, we can't take you because of something with your eyes, whatever, it was, some measurement was off. I'm like, like, shit, here's going my plan. I don't know what else to do. And I had this choice. It was like 3 days before the return flight. Either go back to what I knew or stay in America with no plan and just figure it the fuck out. And, well, you know what happened, obviously.
Are your parents still in Greece?
My mom is.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, my dad's in Seattle now.
Oh, they separated? They're
separated, yeah, and all my brothers have moved over. I have 4 brothers, and we're all scattered. Actually, 3 of them are in Seattle. One's in Santa Monica, and I'm, in California, too.
That's fine. So, from Washington, you decided to say, hey, I'm going to go to the Navy?
So I go to the Marine recruiters, and I'm like, finally, Dad's gone. I can do whatever I want. And I was attracted to the more violent one, right?
Yeah. And who are you staying with at this time? Your grandparents? Or
my uncle.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I had an uncle in Tacoma and another one in Seattle. So I'm living between those two. Very grateful to them, by the way. Shout out to them. And so Marine recruiter gets me. I call home like, hey, I'm joining the Marines. My dad's like, please just talk to the Navy recruiter first. Anything but Marines. I'm like, you know what? I'll go just to make you happy. I go to the Navy recruiter, walk in, the dude's like, hey, take a seat. I'll show you our Navy SEAL video. And, so I knew from the book that this was something I was interested in, but I tell him like, hey, I'd love to, but I can't because I had PRK. And this dude's like, my God, I can see him. Like, I'm sitting on the couch. He's across the room, doesn't even look at me because he's talking to this guy. He's like, don't even worry. You can get a waiver for that.
Waiver for everything.
And in that moment, I mean, my life changed. It's such a hackneyed thing to say, but all of a sudden this thing that was this dream for me that I just figured was impossible was allowed. Yeah. I was allowed to imagine myself being that. Didn't know. I knew how to swim, like crawl stroke, whatever, go to the beach, but I didn't know how to do the combat side stroke. So one of my aunts, who was actually the aunt I was staying with, who was, she used to be a lifeguard. She showed me the regular side stroke, and somebody told me it's like the only difference is you stick your head underwater. So I start going to the local YMCA, and I'm doing like 100 laps a day. Just trying to figure, because what do they say? I've done this a lot, because they say like, do 10,000 of something, and you go 10,000 punches, you'll be an expert. When I was doing Taekwondo, I was like, okay, I'll do 100 kicks a day, I'll be an expert in 100 days. And it's like, that's not really how it works. You have to do 10,000 good ones.
Yeah, for sure.
Right?
It's like people say practice makes perfect, because I know perfect practice makes perfect.
Exactly. So I do all this training. I pass my first PST, and sure enough, I can't get a SEAL contract because I can't get a secret clearance because I'm a dual citizen. So I take the last of my savings that I have now, fly down to San Francisco where the closest Greek consulate was, and I'm like, hey, here's my Greek passport. I want to renounce my citizenship. And the lady almost threw it in my face. She's like, because I'm thinking like they'll make me burn it in front of them or something, and they'll be like, all right, cool, we believe you, you're done. And she goes, it's a much longer process than you think, and I wouldn't even consider starting it until you're 25.
Wow.
So I go back. I take a job as a combat medic, and I go in with an NCS contract. That doesn't matter. It's a complication, but we can skip over that. So I go in as a combat medic, and I do that for 3 years. I had this awesome chief, Chief Wheeler, and he kind of saw me when I first showed up, and he was like, "Hey, okay, this is like one of my big life lessons." One of my previous mentors had told me. He said, as soon as you get to your division or your battalion, the first thing you do when you know which platoon you're assigned to, scrub their medical records. Like, go through them, make sure they have the shots they need, whatever they need, make sure they're organized, they're up to date, because chances are nobody's done that in months to a year. Yeah. So I do that. I spend a few nights doing that, and my chief finds me there. He's like, hey, you're this guy, you're working hard, you're obviously in good shape. you want to go to recon? Force recon, right? Marine Special Forces. And I tell him, yeah, that'd be cool, but I've actually really wanted to go to BUDS. But I was in this NCS contract. They couldn't release me. I tried to, I had the secret clearance thing. And then I tried to go, raise my hand in boot camp. They couldn't get me out of contract. And he's like, that's all nothing. There's a really simple paper that would make you from, that would allow you to be released, and you could go to BUDS. But now that you're here, I need you to go on this deployment. So I need you to give me this one deployment as a medic with your platoon. And then once you're done with that, I promise I'll send you to BUDS.
Yeah.
So this was 2009. I go to Afghanistan with 2-8. And it was...
So we met Doc Todd?
Yeah. Yeah. I met Doc Todd in boot camp.
Oh, okay.
This dude, okay. He's like, George Michael Todd Jr., 4 first names, barbecue, Memphis, Tennessee, right? His dad's won like 7 awards or something. And he's like, that's the secret, no dry rub. So there's always all these like barbecue tips. And Doc Todd, this dude was the most, I'm 19, he's 23, which is so grown up. Maybe he was 25, I don't know. But he just seemed so grown up, so confident, always speaking his mind, but in a way that he could just get away with. He's going up to the chief and he's like, hey, chief, I don't know, I'm just some Memphis boy. I don't know much about anything, but, you're about to send your 3 medics to go do this thing. And, that seems like maybe not the best idea. He's this E1 talking to this chief and telling him, like, hey, I think you're wrong. Well, the chief's like, yeah, this guy's cool. And he's getting away with it.
Yeah.
And just showing this confidence. Same thing with, like, girls at the bar. Just like, hey, I think you're pretty. I'm not hitting on you, nothing. And, of course, like, they're, like, eating it up. And so I asked him one day, because we were roommates for a while. I asked him, like, Mick, what's your secret, man? Like, how do you do it? How are you just so confident? And he's laying in his bed, and he's just still reading his book, and he's just like, man, I got a BOD. I got that White Rhino BOD. And I didn't know what a BOD was, but I knew I wanted one. Right? I'm like, man, how do I get a BOD?
I think I know where this is going. It's hilarious. The White Rhino. Oh, man, that's hilarious.
Yeah, that dude's the man.
I don't know what that is, but I know I want one.
Because I'm still, at this point, I've been in America for less than a year.
Right.
So I'd never seen a Pop-Tart before. First time I saw it, I was like, oh, that's interesting. What is this? And a lot of things still just go over my head.
Yeah.
No idea. But yeah, so go on that deployment, come back, and go to, that was Operation, what did they call it? Kanjar, like Wrath of the Sword or something. Biggest helo insert of combat troops since Vietnam.
Oh, wow.
There were like 20 CH-53s, an entire company, like 200 Marines. Went to this place. Nobody had been there before.
Yeah.
No Western forces had had been in that area before. It was pretty kinetic. It was for a Marine deployment. It was what you want, right? Using quotes, like when you want to do the thing you came to do.
Running and gunning.
Yeah. So, come back, and now I go to pre-buds. Go to pre-buds, and I have some like residual stress fractures, or I developed some stress fractures, malnutrition, overwork, and deployment. I get back from deployment, like in November. That March, I'm in pre-buds, so not a lot of time to recover or train up, and it's not super intense, but it is a lot of running, and it's so my stress fractures started getting worse. And you can probably see where this is going. I'm gonna join another one of those guys who's like, I broke my legs in training.
Right.
But my thing is, like when some of the guys say like I went through buds with broken legs, it's like you had stress fractures. Stress fractures are technically a break, but it's not like a splintering fracture, right? It's micro tears in the bone. I went and got a bone scan, and because I was like, I'm in a lot of pain. I just want to make sure if I'm being a little bitch, just let me know if whatever. Bone scan comes back negative. So I'm thinking, man, I'm just blowing this pain. It's all in my head. Whatever pain I'm feeling, it's not real. Pre-buds is 2 months long, and at the end is the final PST, just to make sure, like, hey, you're making all your times. The last thing is a 4-mile timed run. 2 miles into that, my stress fracture is complete, and I actually break my leg.
Oh shit!
And I should have been dropped from training because it's a 6-month recovery. But the instructors were like, we don't really see anyone actually break their leg. Because guys will get rolled, and then medical rollback land, right? Who goes there? The guys who are afraid to admit they want to quit. So this is very you don't want to be a rollback in buds or in pre-buds,
right.
Which is another reason why I was so reluctant to just take some time to recover before it got to that point. Yep. So, but I heal up, go to buds, class 287, make it through Hell Week, and I get rolled for stress fractures again.
After Hell Week?
After Hell Week.
Oh, wow.
Which is, better now because you're a brown shirt and you get rolled as a brown shirt. And during that time, I had this opportunity. One of my buddies, one of my really good friends, we're still good friends. He's like, hey, Sam, but I went by Sam at the time. Which was this thing that my uncle said, like, hey, Nestor isn't something that you'll fit in very well. So like kind of the same pattern of like, hey, what do I got to do to like smoothly?
You mean in the military?
Yeah. So before
I make fun of you.
Yeah. So before I joined, before I shipped out to boot camp, he was like, hey, maybe start going by Sam. So while I was in the Navy, I was Sam. So my buddy's like, hey, there's these supplements and you need to heal up. We all need to heal up. You've been rolled so much already. You're not going to get another chance. And everybody's doing it. The officers are doing it. The instructors are doing it. So I experimented with some supplements.
Testosterone.
Right. And I am intentionally kind of beating around the bush here because I don't want to seem coy, but there are like other people kind of like implicated in this that I don't want to.
Yeah.
I don't want to be too explicit with.
I think everyone knows. I mean, I think most people know, like, kind of
the culture,
and just the human body. There's certain things that it can withstand. You know what I mean? And when you put your body under that much pressure and that much stress, it's almost, I'm not gonna say impossible, but the supplements help. You know what I mean? To get you through some of those rough patches. Not to say that people don't go through completely clean, but I think most people are probably dabbling a little bit here and there. Just my opinion.
Yeah.
Whatever that's worth.
Yeah. And to my credit, whatever's left of it, I'd already finished my first Hell Week. I was in this rollback land, so it was never like, I had kind of proven the thing that I had to prove with the pure toughness, with the purity toughness.
Was that hard?
Was it hard?
Was it hard going through Hell Week?
Yeah, the first time was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What got you through it?
What got me through it?
Yeah, as far as mindset.
When I think back on it, I think it's just reflecting on the life that I came from.
Yeah.
And this was my one shot at breaking free.
Did you ever want to quit?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Some people say like they never thought of it. That must be nice because, I remember this very, very specific time. We're doing boats on heads, running up and down the beach. For people who aren't familiar, most people listening probably are, but it's this like 250-pound inflatable rubber boat, 6 guys under it. The boat's on your head, and you're literally running with the boat, and these groups of people with the boat kind of smashing into your head. And After a while, it starts feeling like a cheese grater or sandpaper is just rubbing your scalp. Everybody ends up with some hair loss and some bleeding. And that's in addition to all the other running, swimming, logs, and everything we're doing. So this one particular day, we're doing boats on heads, and it usually starts at the beach gate, the Buds gate. We run up the beach, past the rocks, to wherever they feel we've suffered enough, and run back and secure the boats at the gate and go off to our meal or whatever. And this particular time, the instructor who's running us, who's obviously not carrying a boat at all, just in his t-shirt, well, and shorts, but he runs past the gate, and we see it. I was probably the 5th or 6th boat back out of like 15, and we see him run past the gate, and we're like, no fucking way. There's no way. Because you're counting. There's the lifeguard tower. There's the hotel. There's the pile of rocks. You're counting every single thing is what's closer to the end, right? And this is the trick. This is exactly what they're testing. Is okay. You thought we were going to end here, and now we just went past the gate. What are you going to do? Yep. And I'm running. And my buddy Nick, who is also the guy who will later suggest the supplements, he's under the boat with me, and I'm thinking like, man, I don't think I can do this. I thought it was going to end there. We passed the gate. I don't know how much longer this is going to go on. I don't know if I can take this. And Nick's standing next to me. I don't know if he couldn't have known what I was thinking, but he's just like, we're allowed to curse here, right? Yeah, totally. He's like, fuck this cocksucker. The instructor's just like, fuck this guy. And I'm like, yeah, kind of fuck this guy. But in my mind, this is like the mindset, so, you asked me if I want to quit. Yes, I wanted to quit. But in my mind, I'm thinking, God, I hope I trip over something. I hope a ditch or seaweed catches me and I get mangled. So I get like pulled out, but I don't have to quit. Right?
I think that has to go through a bunch of people's minds.
Yeah.
It has to.
I honestly don't trust anybody who says they never thought of quitting.
I think there's some people out there that have.
Who are just so maniacal.
Well, I think they're just like a straight sadist, that don't even they just don't have it in them. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And I'm not saying that I wasn't put through that, but I think there's certain things in my life where like quitting to me is like I would rather die.
Yeah.
Certain things. And like, for example, the pain pills, going through that torture of having that major back surgery with no pain pills or whatever, that was complete torture. It was like, but it was conscious suffering because I wanted to prove to myself that I could do it.
Yeah. Did you smoke during that, or was it just completely nothing?
No, completely nothing. Wow. Just water. No CBD, no nothing.
Shit.
So,
because I did my meniscus surgery a couple months ago. I did the same thing. I think I did pain pills for, because they have like residual pain pills from the surgery, like what's in your body. I think I did 24 hours of what they gave me, but I smoked.
Yeah.
But I could feel it though. It was almost like being high. It didn't take the pain away. It just made me fascinated with it.
Yeah. For me, like when I would smoke after like the first, I don't think I smoked after my back surgery. I think it was like probably 6 months maybe after when I first smoked.
When you first smoked.
Yeah. And I was still in pain, 6 months out. Like it was still like I still had residual stuff, and I would smoke, and then it would be like it would draw the attention to that area. You know what I mean? I was more like hyper focused on it. I was
like, wow, hello.
Yeah, how you doing there, buddy? So yeah, I think there are certain people though within that community that are probably the people that like if a guy like Ray Care says that he didn't think about quitting. Yeah. I believe him.
Yeah.
I believe him.
Yeah.
I've been around him, and I'm like, yep, I think he's one of those guys. I'm not calling him a sadist. I'm just saying he's like just a headstrong, like balls to the wall. Just quitting to him is like no way. Just I'm not doing it. And some of the things he talked about on our podcast was like probably what I would have been doing. Was he would get kind of juice from seeing other people quit. He's like, okay, I won't quit until that dude quits.
Well, we got that.
Yeah.
And that's actually what happened, on this beach. We run a little further, and then we stop. And I thought the instructor heard Nick's comment, right? Like fuck this cocksucker. So I'm like, oh shit, god damn it, Nick, we're about to get in more. Like, what more can they do, right? But instead, I see this guy run out from one of the boats behind us, and then you hear the ding, ding, ding. a couple more went after him, and so like just like you were talking about, like we're like, you just threw fresh meat to a pack of dogs, and we're like, yes, let's do this. Let's do the whole thing all over again. Let's do it like that. That is what we came for. And sure enough, so we start running again. We go maybe 50 feet. We halt again, and the instructor points us off the beach. So we had gone maybe 100, 200 yards past the gate total.
Right.
But in that minute, not even, that's where, everything else comes into play. That's where the real test is. It's not in everything else that made it. It's in getting to the point where it's so hard. It's the unforgiving minute. You know that Rudyard Kipling, it's a poem. If you can fill the unforgiving minute with 60 seconds worth of distance run, then yours is the earth and everything that's in it. And what's more, you'll be a man, my son.
Nice.
I love that poem.
Nice. That was good.
Yeah.
So you made it through, man. You got through, and you got rolled as a brown shirt, which is, like you said, probably not as bad because you come back as a brown shirt.
And that happens, relatively frequently. Like every class. So after we graduated Hell Week, before I got rolled, we were joined by a bunch of rollbacks.
Right.
And so I dabble with the supplements. I stop before I get reinstated into training, into second phase. I pass pool comp first try, which I think pool comp kind of worked for me because I'm kind of OCD. Like I'm just like super detailed and obsessive and like, to the point where it's gotten me in trouble. But so I passed pool comp, and that's 3 weeks into second phase. That happens on a Friday. Then the next Monday is the retest for people who failed, and then Tuesday we go on a rec dive, which is they take us out on a boat, and it's the first dive that we're not in the pool getting harassed by the instructors.
Yeah.
And before I can put my gear on, I get pulled aside, and they're like, "Hey, you need to go talk to so-and-so, the OIC, officer in charge." And I'm thinking, it never crossed my mind. I'm thinking like, shit, this is a Red Cross message. Someone in my family got hurt. Like they need me for something. What's going on? And sure enough, the OIC sends me to the Master at Arms, who is the Navy's version of the military police. Yep. And they wanted to ask me some questions.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, so it was, doing the wrong thing at the wrong place at the wrong time. Because again, a lot of people did it. And that's not an excusatory thing. It's just a fact. A lot of people were doing it, probably still are. And I just happened to be around when this really big investigation happened. Yeah. Somebody went to somebody's house and told on them. They told on somebody else. And then all of a sudden people are ratting people out to get better deals. And I think like 25 students were pulled out of training. NCIS got involved. So I got
popped for it too while I was in. So
really,
oh, yeah.
How did that go down?
Like a fart in church. Nah, it was same thing, dude. A lot of people were doing it. You know what I mean? Like I was a cop, so security forces in the Air Force, and a lot of us were dabbling with supplements and whatever. I had a really good connection out there in England where I was, and so I made the mistake of I was just kind of getting careless, and I think I shot up in front of somebody, and before I went to the gym, thought it was a trusted person, and it turned out not to be. And so I came back to my room from the gym one night, and they were in my room like searching my shit, and I was like, oh man. So make a long story short, the commander that I had at the time was just like, I don't know what to tell you, man. Like I was looking at getting kicked out, for the juice and stuff. So he's like, well, I need to wait and see what OSI comes back with the investigation. And all they really had me on was they did something. They lost, like there was a chain of custody issue where they lost my blood and my urine, I guess. So they really had me on was possession of anabolic steroids, and they ended up just giving me an Article 15 for it. And he was like, I was a good troop. I wasn't a bad guy. You know what I mean? I stuck to myself. I wasn't a dude that was, I partied. I had fun, when I was overseas and whatnot. but like legitimately, like my main love and like where my attention always was like in the gym. And I mean, it sounds like to dudes that are like, oh, I just want to go and hook up with a bunch of chicks, and like I just wasn't that guy. And it wasn't like that I didn't like women, I did, but my focus was like in being bigger, stronger, faster all the time. You know, I was obsessed about it. You know, like I carried the Arnold Schwarzenegger's like encyclopedia of bodybuilding everywhere I went. Oh God,
what a great book.
Yeah, I was just like phenomenal. Like I was just like obsessed. And so yeah, I got an Article 15 for it, man. And I heard after I got out that another guy got busted that was in my squadron, and he got hemmed up. He got kicked out and the whole deal. So, and I guess he was upset, like, oh, Boyer didn't get in trouble. But it was a different commander, different times, and I think they wanted to send a message. But the same thing happened, dude. Like I got the investigation, I saw it, and like all these people, that you think are friends, and you think are trusted advisors and people you can trust. I mean, everyone was rolling. And
at the time, you think you're in this really tight community.
Yeah.
This like definitely. Underground, like secret handshakes.
I thought it was like an inner circle that like the information only we knew, and like whatever. And
but they know. People know. I remember there was an instructor. I was in the pool doing some workout before I was reinstated, and maybe it was like I had a little bit of back knee or something, or I'd gotten big fast. And he's like, "Walters, whatever you're doing, bro, like cut that shit out before you." It was almost like this warning, like he knew like the pot was starting to boil. Yeah. And good thing too, because by the time the investigation happened, my piss came back clean. Same kind of thing. Like they didn't have anything on me unless I told them and admitted to them, and I didn't do that. Right. So
it was funny. You always get in these weird predicaments, especially in the military. You're in such a bubble.
And I didn't lawyer up.
Yeah, neither did I. So I had the CDC, the Area Defense Council or whatever, ADC, whatever, CDC, ADC, I think it's called. And so they give you like a military attorney. But when I went down to talk to them or whatever, I didn't have an attorney or anything. And they were like, oh, well, tell us where you're getting it. Tell us where. I was like, getting what? Yeah. I don't know what you're talking about. Like I just wasn't playing their game at all. They're like, oh, you want something to eat? And like in my mind, what I'm thinking is like, well, you probably have some like salt, like who knows what you have in there. There's like some truth serum in there, dude. I'm not eating anything from here. I'm not drinking anything from here. I'm not eating anything from here. I'm just going to sit here and not say a word. So I just kept my mouth shut, dude. Even reading the investigation, like there was no statements for me. There was no statement for me. And so like when I heard that people were like talking and just talking all kinds of shit, like I actually went to one of the guys and was like, dude, whoever is like running their, just tell them to stop. Like I know what this is. Like you guys all think because I was the one that like maybe started some of this or whatever, like that I was gonna just dime everyone out and like whatever. Like I'm not that kind of guy. You know what I mean? It's not gonna save me. Yeah. I knew I was in trouble. Like so me like talking about other people, like what's that gonna do for me? It's gonna get them in trouble too, and then what, make me feel better? Like no, dude, I'm not a rat, dude.
It's the prisoner's dilemma.
It is, right? But I'm always the guy that, or I always have been, that I just don't say anything, man. Just don't talk. And it's unfortunate because when I got out, I had a copy of that investigation, and I threw it away. And it bums me out like badly, dude. I'm like, man, why did I throw that away? Because later in life, my brother was in the Navy, and he got busted right after I did, but for like real drugs, not supplements. And he had accused me that like I told the OSI or whatever that I was getting the steroids for my brother, and I'm like, what? Dude, like it doesn't even make any logical sense, dude. Like I'm in England, you're in Hawaii, dude. Like that doesn't even make sense. You gonna mail it to me? Like how does that even make sense? Why would I say that? But he like to this day like still believes that. He believes that that's what happened, and that's kind of, I don't really care. It's like, whatever, dude. If you're going to believe that shit, I don't care, dude. I know what I am. I know who I am, and, like, I'm not going to worry about it. However, I do wish I had that copy of that investigation still so I can show me that, listen, dick. There's you can look at all these statements, dude, and guess what? You're not going to find one single one from me. Yeah. Not one. So, it is what it is. I digress. So what happened? So when they called you in, they didn't have your piss came back clean. So all they had you was basically you would have said anything. So just they had hearsay. Basically.
Yeah, and this is over months. Yeah, over a few months.
So
and
you're not training this whole time.
Not training, and that's the shitty thing. They're hanging this over our heads. They're like, hey, the first day they're like, hey, you want to go back to training, right? I'm like, yeah. Okay, well, the more you cooperate, the faster you get back to training. As if there's a way to be like, oh yeah, I did that, but I'm sorry, and they'll just like shut the fuck,
No, but there's people that are dumb, dude. They'll take the bait. They'll be like, all right, I'll take that.
Yeah.
But anyway, so
they just don't have the capacity to rebel. Right.
Yeah.
And if I trace back to the writing on the wall, in my school in Greece, that's pretty much all I've been doing my whole life. Is just like, nope, I'm going to do something different.
So you ended up going back to training and then graduating with a little class.
Yeah. So the commander at the time, the investigation gets pushed aside, but the master at arms wants me to go reclassify, get another job, and I'm like, I don't think so, because I never got dropped. And so I request to see the commander, and he says like, hey, I heard good stuff about you from the instructors. I'm like, you're all right. And I came clean with him. I told him like, hey, this is the deal. Because when I walked into his office, I told myself, whatever the outcome is, I don't want to start my whatever career I have at the teams by lying to their this top leadership.
Totally.
So I came clean with him.
Yeah.
He's like, hey, we appreciate that.
So I'm taking it too, bro.
Who knows? Right. But he's like, hey, I'm going to put you back in training. I'm like, yeah, sweet. But my punishment to you is you got to do Hell Week again.
Kicking the nuts, dude.
So, and I'm thinking like, okay, just Hell Week, that's not too bad. It's the 3 weeks of first phase that ruin you. And he's like, okay, maybe actually start with first phase. I'm like, okay, well, at least I don't have to do the 2-3 weeks of orientation. And then, I'm leaving and like actually just do everything again. So just started all the way. Wow. So I started back with 293, made it all the way through buds with them. Got rolled in SQT for SQT is SEAL qualification training. Again, most people probably know, and I got rolled for CQC, which is close quarters battle. It's just shooting, house clearing stuff. But yeah, graduated with 294. Went out to my team in Hawaii, and I was all right. I think I got out there. Being a new team guy got to my head, which happens, I think. And I was finally, after all these years, 25 years of being this like angsty, having something to prove, I'm like, oh great, I proved it. Now can I start being me? Now can I start finding it acceptable?
Yeah.
And so yeah, I think I just I was okay. I was an average performer, slightly better at some things than others. So back when I was a medic, I was like honor man of both medic schools that I went to, and then in at the team, I was honor man of communication school, which is not like the biggest one, but it was one where I was like, it's like academically based.
Yeah.
Whereas I found that when the honor man was contingent upon kind of cooperation and getting along with others, I never got those. Right, and that's a pattern that I didn't really trace until later on.
Yeah.
Is that I was kind of the way I acted and the way I interacted was very self-centered. Yeah. I want my career to go better. I want to shine. I want to get an award. I didn't get any awards. 10 years in the Navy, not even a NAM. And But that's where kind of the real trouble started. So I was like a year and a half into my first platoon. We'd done our workup and we were waiting to go on our first mission. And my chief is like, hey, you're going to switch platoons. It's a manning issue, right? It's not performative. It's not punitive. It's just this other platoon is light and they need bodies. So you and this other guy are going. Well, this other guy was doing ecstasy, and another guy wants to like rat him out. And there's this like squabble going on in the platoon. and they get together one night. They're drinking. They're talking about it. They get into a fight. I was there, and so then that next week, I have to go to a disciplinary review board about this because about the altercation. And so this other guy is accusing the one guy of doing the drugs, and they call me in as a witness because I was at the fight.
Yeah.
Right. And I go in there and I'm thinking about, this guy that my good friend Nick that I guess I lost to the steroids thing. And I'm thinking like, okay, this one doesn't have to go.
Did he end up getting kicked out for that?
He got kicked out.
Oh,
yep.
Wow.
Other than honorable. Kind of shitty because he was, and the shitty thing is, in many ways, he was my motivation to make it through my first time. He was the one, who was like motivating me through. In many ways, yeah.
Nice.
In many ways, like I consider him to be the superior to me.
Yeah.
And
I don't think he was malicious either in trying to give you a tip, like, hey man, you should try it.
No, I mean he was doing it too.
Right. So I don't think it was malicious by him offering it to you. It's like, hey man, he just wanted to help you.
Yeah.
It's a bummer.
Yeah, it really is. So I felt that loss, and So I kind of see this pattern again. I'm like, this time I can save this guy. This guy doesn't have to go away.
Yeah.
So, I go into this board and I spend 2 hours, and they're asking me these questions about stuff that I know, and I've only heard hearsay through text messages, and they're asking me about it, and I'm telling them like, nope, he didn't do anything. This other guy is a drunk and has marital problems, and he's just making accusations to to shift focus off himself or whatever. And I feel like this is getting kind of run on. Let's see, where are we? So, bottom line, I lie to cover for this guy who's doing drugs.
Yeah.
And it turns out the other guy had recorded the conversation that he had with him. So he brings in this recording that's like him saying, these are almost the exact words. You hear, he's like, I know you did it, and I want to hear your dirty little mouth admit it. And the other guy's like, yeah, okay, I'm sorry. It was one time, and he brings this recording in to these 8 Master Chiefs who just spent 2 hours grilling me, and I'm lying to them like, nope, nothing. And they're like, okay, bro, what about this?
I mean, they can't prove that you were there during that conversation, though, right?
Well, I mean, I'm in it.
Oh, you're in the conversation?
I'm in the conversation. I'm sitting there. I'm sitting there watching them
before the fight.
Yeah.
Shit. Man.
Yep.
That sucks.
And the whole thing was, it started with just what happened that night. You were witness to the fight, because it's still an ARI.
Yeah.
Right.
Alcohol-related incident for the people.
Yep.
Who don't know this.
Yep. Yeah. So that was one, and that kind of, they're like, okay, you know what? We're gonna let you keep going with your next platoon, but we know we can't trust you now. So now I'm in my second platoon,
which is kind of a catch-22, though, right?
Yeah.
Because I don't know. I think as a leader, it's like you gotta think about intent. Like, what was your intention by withholding the truth? What was your intention there? Your intention was to save somebody, to be like, dude, I don't want his career to be ruined.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So to me, I don't know, man. As a leader, that's a tough one, dude. It's like, dude, you showed loyalty to your team.
Well, they had me in that DRB, the disciplinary review board. One of them was like, hey, take your trident off, put it on the table. Because they can, the command master chief can just pull your bird for lack of trust. Right. So it's sitting on the table. They're like, now do you have something to say? And I'm like, sorry. And I remember actually, I did another thing that I don't think happens very often. I exercised my right to terminate the interview, right, in quotes, which is, again, I didn't lawyer up, which I should have, but you sign away your rights, you waive your right to remain silent, but the last thing you initial is, I reserve the right to terminate this interview at any time without any reason. So I do that, and look at me, they're like, fuck this guy, but also he's perfectly within his legal limits.
Wow.
So I get through that one. The other guy gets kicked out. I'm in my second platoon. Oh, and to be fair, to their credit, one of them even said like, "Hey, I'm really pissed at you right now, but I do see where you're coming from." And there was a certain amount, I think, of like kind of underground respect for that.
Yeah.
Because administratively, like I kind of was ready to take a bullet. Yep. Like this administrative, like the next worst thing that can happen is like you lose your bird.
Yeah.
So I make it through that. My second platoon was going really well. We're in our workup, and they needed someone to go to medic school, which Special Forces medic school it's 6 months long. It's tough academically, but one of the medics was leaving. There was a turnover, and they're like, "Hey, you have this prior experience," and I really wanted to go. Because with the medic qual, you're like, okay, I didn't go on a mission with my first platoon. I need this medic qual, so I'll be guaranteed. Like they'll need me to go on every single mission, right? Because what do you want to do? You want to go on missions. So I'm like, yeah, I'll go to medic school. And we were in pre-deployment training. We're doing these, we're doing dive after dive. And I'm going home, at 2 a.m., reading up on, studying for the EMT test from this fat book. Because I couldn't ship out to the school for the first month because of some like regulation. So I had to teach myself EMT, join the class, test out of EMT, and then continue the training with them. Yeah. So I get there, I go through all that, and this was probably the peak, but also the lowest eventually point of my career because physically I was in my best shape ever and I was clean. I was, I'd just been promoted to SO1, so E6, and I'm doing well in my platoon, doing well at this school, top of my class, and but I had attitude problems. I was talking back to the instructors. I remember I had this test and I failed, and in front of these other guys who were like junior SEALs, and I'm like, "Oh, but bro," I'm calling an instructor bro. I'm like, "Well, but you didn't give me enough time," or like, "You didn't say this," and it's just like in front of everybody. Like you just don't need to be doing that. Yeah. Talking back to the instructor in front of like really junior SEALs who are fresh out of SQT, and that attitude and behavior culminated in I was doing clinical trials at a hospital, one of the civilian hospitals. I was chewing tobacco at the time. I put a lip in. I was in the ICU, and the nurses are like, "Take it out." I take it out. And I was wearing this hat. I was wearing a backwards ball cap. And one of them told me to take it off. And I didn't take my hat off. I was like, it's part of my uniform. I said some stupid shit. And she was like, "All right." She writes a stern letter to the schoolhouse. It says they don't want me back at the hospital. Schoolhouse kicks me back to the team. The team's like, "Fuck you, dude. First, you lied us with the drugs. Now we stick our necks out for you to send you to this hospital training, and you're just like being a dickhead. Giving a black eye to the teams, yeah. Right? Super bad publicity. The family made a complaint, and at that point, my CO, my commanding officer was like, "Hey, I'm this close to pulling your trident and administratively and kicking you out of the Navy." And the only reason he didn't, according to him, is because somebody in the head shed vouched for me and said like, "Hey, I can fix this guy. Like, I still see something in him." Yeah. And so this senior chief, he pulls me in after the board, and he's like, "Hey, Walters, I know what your problem is. You think you're better than everyone else, and I'm going to fix that for you." So,
yes.
So, I mean, some of it was pretty straightforward. It's like, hey, you're standing gate duty from like 6 a.m. to noon, and you take a little lunch break, and then you're doing these menial tasks, whatever it is, like pulling weeds, scraping this, sand this, pull this, dust that, shred all this paper, just like stupid menial tasks. But you're still a SEAL. But now you're that SEAL. and you're in your combat camis with a weed whacker, right, walking around the compound, and everybody, all the technicians, everybody gets to see you, right? So it was like this. It was like beautiful in a way. It's like just poetically, sadistically made.
For sure. Some of the best leadership in the military, I tell you what. Like stuff like that, like that's a huge lesson. You know what I mean?
Bro, some of the stuff was really creative. He had me go to the shower stalls, and this is like 30, 40 feet of showers like running along the wall. And he's like, clean the shower grates. And I lift these things up, and I swear nobody's cleaned them since the building was made, like in decades. And there's like armpit hair, bar soap, pubes, just sweat and nastiness and shaving cream, just like, yeah, and just because above the grates, that's getting cleaned by the janitor, but you lift them and it's just these like, is it stalactites or stalagmites, whatever hangs from the clothes, just like these drooping things, yeah. and the janitor was out, so I couldn't find gloves.
Wow. That's terrible.
So those are good times. So I get back.
Excuse me.
I was on this. He called it professional rehabilitation.
Yeah.
Right. It's
Sounds
great.
like
Yeah. So I get back from 6 months or a year of that, or whatever, and now I join my 3rd platoon, and I'm like, this is it. I've read all the self-help books. I've put in my time, and this whole time, these 6 months, I'm doing all these tasks. I am. One big takeaway from that was I had to interact with the technicians and support staff way more than I ever had to before.
Yeah.
So I'm actually working in their shacks, working in their offices, like working for them. Like I'm assigned to them to do relieve them of some of their duties. And so I'm getting to know them, and it stops being this, I'm a SEAL, you're a diver, you're support. It's just like you just meet these people. That's Bobby, that's Rick, that's Tony, and we're all just working together.
Yeah.
And so I joined my 3rd platoon, and so I'm in this mindset where I'm like, this time I got this. This time I've learned my lesson. Right? I'm not gonna fuck up again. I can't fuck up again. Right? And my new platoon leadership told me, don't fuck up again, right? They're like, you get a clean slate. I didn't really have a clean slate. Yeah, exactly. And I think I did pretty well for the most part. And actually, I know I was doing well because there was this guy. I don't know. I don't want to say his name because he's still in, but he was this big Florida boy. Anybody who was in my platoon knows exactly who I'm talking about. And before he left the team, he was leaving at the time, he warmed up to me, right? And he's the kind of guy who's just like salty with everyone, and everyone knows it. So I remember one of my older buddies, he was like, bro, he said goodbye to you, he said take care. Like, well, he thinks you're cool, right? So I'm like, all right, it's working. Just keep your head down, do what they say, don't fuck up, show up early as fuck to everything, be meticulous with everything. And I had jobs like, rearrange the snack bar, right? Like relist the things where people sign what they owe or whatever, rearrange our space in the warehouse, all this stupid shit. I was just so happy to do it. Take the trash out? Yes, it's my platoon's trash. Dip spit from one of my SEALs? Yes, please let me lick it. I'll lick it up. Right? I would have been a necklace of their used condoms to bring me luck, right? Like whatever it takes. And the downside of that is, the upside is, sure, you're working hard and taking very fastidious care of everything, but the downside is you start giving up your, like, this is what I believe and this is who I am. And I start hearing things that I wasn't really exposed to in my other platoons. Guys are kind of talking about women a certain way. I think that was one of the big things I noticed is like this dude was talking about his wife and like low key, not really abuse, but just like treating her badly.
Yeah.
And I really, really wanted to say something. I want to be like, bro, you're a fucking asshole. Why does nobody say that? But I just kept my mouth shut, maybe even laughed along a little bit.
Yeah.
And I hate myself for that, for giving up so much of my conviction to fit in. But yeah, so I'm with this platoon for a while, and we were our pre-deployment, so just getting everything ready, and we go on this trip to the shooting school, and I was the radio collateral guy, so I took care of that stuff. And one day, we'd only been there for a week. Again, I was super meticulous at everything. Had these lists, had these checklists. Make sure your gear's prepared because your magazines have to be loaded with a certain number of rounds. You have to make sure you don't forget your eye protection, your ear protection. Obviously your plates, your pistol. What weapons do you need? What sights? Whatever. Is it simunition or real? So one morning, it's I'm one of the first guys to shoot, and I go up to the line, and the instructor does a little buzzer, and I present my rifle to the steel target, and I realize that my EOTech is off. I'd forgotten to turn my EOTech on.
Yeah.
Right? So for those who don't know, there's a holographic sight, a little red dot that you're supposed to see in the center of this glass. Yeah. And I see it's just blank glass, and I'm like, motherfucker, I can't. That's a dead man's gun. Right? I can't have a dead man's gun. I can't be fucked up. So in my mind, I'm like, okay, I'll just take a couple shots and then come off the line and be like, oops, I guess I'm not shooting well. Right? So I go bang, bang, kind of all over the place, 3-4 rounds. And the instructor comes up behind me. He's like, hey, Walters, your shots are all over the place. What's going on? And he asked me straight up, are your sights even on? And I take this and I'm like, this is my chance. And I'm coming off the line, unshouldering my rifle. And as I'm doing that, I'm starting to press the button, and I'm saying, yeah, they're just dim from doing house runs last night. And I'm thinking like, sweet, that's my chance. I got away. It's a little white lie, no big deal. And he goes, oh, well, that's funny, because they turn off automatically after 12 hours. And one of my head shed was standing right next to me the whole time. And yeah, that was it. I went to another board, and they're like, look, man, we just can't trust you. I can't trust you to go underwater and, be responsible and do the right thing, even when it's, this uncomfortable thing to do.
Right.
And so I'm going back, and so I get sent back from this school, go back, and I'm supposed to report to the same senior chief, the one who had me under probation. So I'm like, shit, all right, Cinderella and her stepsisters, here we go. Yeah. But this time, he's just like, hey, Walters, good to see you. Take some time, get your shit together, do what you got to do. I got nothing for you. Yeah. And that's when I knew it was over. Because when they stop punishing you, that means they've realized they can't fix you.
Wow. So at that moment you were done.
Mm-hmm.
So you never deployed, you deployed as a medic, but not as a SEAL.
Yep.
Wow, dude. That's gnarly.
Yep. Almost 5 years as a SEAL. So, and this is where it gets interesting. Well, for me. This is where it gets, weird. So, right around that time, the Navy changed their early out policy.
Yeah.
So other guys had lost their tridents, gotten their SEAL status revoked at my team, and they had the choice to either separate.
Yep.
So I'd been in for 10 years.
Yeah.
So you should have the choice to separate honorably or stay in and pick another job. Because if you were a SEAL, unless you were an absolute jackass, you'd probably be pretty good at whatever else you do.
Yeah.
Right? And at this point, the leadership is, to their credit, pretty supportive, and they're like, whatever you want to do, we'll support you. And I say, you know what, I just want to get out, go to school. And I should probably backtrack a little bit, which I hate doing, but so this is like 2018, right around 2016 when the incident with the hospital happened. I visited a friend in San Diego, and actually Mario, who you had on your podcast, right? Yeah. And I was at his house, and he was probably peeking at his like astronomy, astrophysics phase, because I'm at his house and I catch like 15 minutes of the show Cosmos with Neil deGrasse Tyson. And so I was like, oh, that looks pretty cool, great visuals. So I go home when I get back to Hawaii, and I watch the whole show, the 11 episodes, and I get done, and I'm crying. I'm like, oh my God, this is, I never knew what evolution was. Now I just understand it. I never knew I was able to understand science, and now all of a sudden I do, and it just broke it down for me, and it painted this picture of this world where we can get along, we can have goals and visions outside of our petty squabbles. And I knew right then and there, I was like, I want to be a part of this. So, and this might have been something that, I don't want to say derailed me, but kind of distracted me, and maybe in part made me not fully committed and fully invested to the SEAL thing anymore. I don't know. But I remember I texted my buddy Zach, and I was like, hey, I want to work for NASA. That's my new goal. And he texted me back and he goes, all right, I hope you're good at math.
It's turning my head, so I'm just...
Yeah, sure. He's like, cool, hope you're good at math. Which was nothing to him. He's like cracking a little joke. I'm sitting there like, shit, how do I get good at math? So turn to Uncle Google. Free online math classes, and I find Khan Academy. For those of you who don't know, it's free online software that just has these tutorial videos with exercises. It's just this incredible learning experience. So I find them, and I'm like, okay, if I want to learn math, I got to start doing math. And so I started their algebra level math. So it's like 2x plus 1 equals 7. What is x? Right? That level. Right. And I just start like, okay, I'll just start doing this. And I finished their algebra sequence. And there's this thing that's popular in the military called the CLEP.
X would be 3 on that, right?
What's that?
Is X 3 on that equation?
Yes.
I just assumed I saw it, dude.
You got this.
Cool.
So
sorry about that.
Yeah, no. So there's this thing called the CLEP, the College Level Examination Program, which allows you to test out of college classes for credit. And so I take the CLEP for algebra, and I barely pass it when I realize, like, wait, this is working. According to this, this college level examination, I learned algebra from these videos and like online exercises. And I still hadn't taken a college math class yet. So I'm thinking, okay, well that counts. So I also started doing my associates. And it also happened, around the same time with the hospital. I started getting this idea that like maybe my career won't go as well as I thought. And so this degree started being this backup plan. Yeah. So I started working on my associates in science and math, just super basic stuff. But I just kept doing the Khan Academy. All right, so now we're moving forward through to where we left off to getting kicked out. But now we're doing Khan Academy for 3 years. All right.
So what they do? They give you a honorable discharge, or how they work it?
So that's where it gets funny. Is the Navy changed their policy right around the time I got kicked out, so there were no more early outs.
Yeah.
So they pull me back in. They're like, "Hey, actually, you don't have this option. You got to reclassify." But I'd already gotten the idea in my head that I'm going to get out, use my GI Bill to take my associates and turn it into a bachelor's from a more accredited university than this online thing. Right? But they're like, no, you have to stay in and reclassify. I'm like, no, you already said I'm getting separated. I already made this plan. That's what I want to do. And so they start looking for like little ways to manipulate the system. I went to the JAGs, the Navy lawyers on base, probably every week. And I was like, hey, what about this loophole? Fun fact, you can get administratively separated from the Navy for bedwetting.
Interesting.
Yep. I strongly considered that. But what kept creeping up is these lawyers kept telling me no matter what I did, and no matter what, like, even if I claimed like mental illness or something, this incident with the hospital from 2016, that was a non-judicial punishment, since it was within the same enlistment, would come back and would reduce my honorable discharge to a general one. And they told me, they're like, hey, I wish you'd come in within like the 7 days to appeal because this wasn't handled properly, but now it's been 2 years, it's too late. Right. So life lesson here, lawyer up. Always lawyer up. Because every time they told me, yeah, you could lawyer up, it'll just delay the process, it'll just take time, lawyer the fuck up.
With an outside attorney or with a military attorney, would you say?
Well, if you get the military attorney at your command, they actually have a vested interest in the command, and they'll tell you that, most of them. Right. Then you can do the JAG that's on base, but you'll get counseling. You won't get focused attention. There won't be a single JAG assigned to your case as defense. It'll be like you go in there, they review it. What's your status now? So you'll kind of be passed off again and again. Yeah. So depending on the severity, it might be worth getting a civilian lawyer.
Right. I felt the same way. I should have maybe lawyered up a couple times, but it worked out all right.
We're here now.
So what ultimately ended up happening? Did you end up getting out on a general? Did you get out on an honorable, or how did it work?
So I ended up getting out with a general. They found this loophole where they said, you can waive your right to an administrative board. You could try to go to the board and say, hey, I deserve an honorable, but you probably won't get it. It's a huge pain in the ass for us. So if you waive your right to the administrative separation board, we'll expedite the process, and you can be out of the Navy in like a month. And this was,
Do you keep your benefits?
So the only reason I keep that, so that's what made this a really difficult time for me, is because I wasn't clear on the extent of what you would keep, and I'm thinking, I help my family sometimes for financial support. I'm going from having a job to not having a job. Do I keep my GI Bill? Do I even qualify? Do I qualify for disability? Do I qualify for unemployment? Yeah. Right, which you should when you get out of being in the military for 10 years. Yeah. But there wasn't really anyone to make that clear to me. So when I signed and waived my right to the Administrative Separation Board, I had submitted my college applications, had not heard back. I didn't know what benefits I was going to keep. I didn't know whether I would keep my... Actually, I knew I would keep my GI Bill because... somebody told me I would. Because I had... Every reenlistment you do is technically an honorable discharge.
Right.
So that was a really difficult decision to make. And so throughout this time that I'm doing the college applications, it was my brother's idea, my younger brother's, Mike, and he goes, well, what if you applied to Princeton? And I'm like, well, you don't just go to Princeton, right? People prepare for years, right? I can't. It's December. I haven't taken SATs ever in my life. I haven't really written college applications ever in my life, and the deadline is March 15th. Right. So I'm like, and my credits won't transfer, and he's, I can hear him on the phone just like rolling his eyes at me. He's like, you're not even trying. So I start doing the research and I start looking into it, and turn to old Google again, and I'm like, okay, there's Princeton, there's Yale. They have pretty good, like, not pretty good, but they do say they accept veterans and as transfer students. But I'm like, okay, are there Ivy Leagues on the West Coast? Because I didn't really want to be up there. and I get Stanford. And, you know, I didn't go to high school here. I didn't know what the big deal was. I'm just like, they say Stanford is the best. It's on the West Coast. It's in Cali. I'd heard someone in Buds had gone to Stanford Business School, and everybody was super stoked on him. So I'm like, all right, that's my top pick.
Yeah.
And then I had to take the SATs, which, like, from the day that my brother called me, or I talked to my brother, it was like a Tuesday. The SATs had been officially taken on the Monday before, so the day before. Yeah. But there was one base doing like a cleanup shot the next Thursday. So I had 2 days. That's not, you can't even like study in 2 days. So I didn't even study. I just had to go take the SATs. Yeah. And then spend the next 3 months. That's all I did. It was the lawyer shit, trying to figure out what my discharge was going to look like, and just being in my room writing and rewriting this like 500 word essay. Like, what do I tell these people that says, like, how dare I think I deserve to go to an Ivy League school when I'm getting kicked out of the Navy? Wow. Like, what do you tell them?
It's quite the predicament, man, for sure.
And I'm also thinking, like, the odds are like 0 point something percent to get in as a transfer student to any of these schools, you know. So it'd be so much easier to just stay in, do my 2 more years with a steady job, finish my degree, maybe even stay in the Navy. Like, there was no, I didn't have to leave the Navy.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, so I signed the Navy away. And I remember, like, the week before the applications were actually due, I covered everything in my room with sheets so that nothing would distract me. I didn't see drawers. I didn't see, you know, my dresser. There was nothing except there's my desk with, you know, scrap paper, my laptop, and that was it. Yeah. So yeah. And yeah, so I think the other like really trying part for me in this was, so the first school I hear back from was Columbia. Yep. And they were like, no thanks.
Thanks, but no thanks.
Yeah. So I'm like, shit, my plan is not working.
Yeah.
But then I hear back from Yale, and they're like, we'd like you to do an interview. You can do Skype or, you know, in person. And I'm like, I get one shot at this. I'm doing it in person. Yeah. So I get all my, you know, whatever airline miles I had, and I fly from Hawaii to Yale for 2 nights to do this interview. And I remember driving from the airport to go to my hotel, and I call one of my friend's wives, who's a psychologist, and we're talking, and I'm telling her, like, I don't know what I'm going to tell this interviewer. You know, they're going to ask me, why am I leaving the Navy? I don't want to lie, but I don't want to tell them, you know, everything that's happened. And like, yeah, who am I to think that, you know, like they want you to be confident, but I don't feel confident. Like, I want to, and I believe I can, or I believe I can do something if I go there, but I don't believe I deserve to.
Right.
And she tells me, she's the first person to tell me about this thing called imposter syndrome. Right? Where, especially for, you know, low income minorities, and I'm technically an immigrant to the U.S., right? You just feel this like you don't deserve this, you don't deserve anything. And
play small ball and everything.
Hmm?
Play small ball and everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we had that conversation. It didn't make me feel less like an imposter, but I just kind of went in the interview thinking, like, okay, I'm just going to tell her. Like, whatever they want to know, I'll just tell them, and that'll be it. And it was a huge relief when I accepted that. And when I accepted that, I could just go in there and it's so cliche, but like, be myself.
Totally.
And just see what happened. And on the flight back from that interview, I got an email, and I it says like, hey, there's been an update to your admission or to your application. It was from Stanford. I open it, and I'm like, oh my God, there's no way. It's just
accepted you. Yeah, buddy.
You know, I still kind of don't believe it.
And what happened with Yale? Did they ended up accepting
Yale got back to me a month later. They accepted me, yeah. but by the time they got back to me, I was just like, you know, because Stanford was my first pick, so it was just like,
right.
you know, I was like, oh, thanks.
Wow, dude. That's really cool, man. Super cool. So what are you doing there? What are you doing at Stanford?
Yeah, so continuing like the sciencey thing, I thought I was going to do computer science, which is what I was working on, but kind of inspired by Mario, and also with the idea that I wasn't restricted to what I was when I was doing the online classes. I can do anything. I was like, you know, I'm just going to do this math thing. Because with Khan Academy, I'm using quotes here because I'm not really sure I'm allowed to, like, I taught myself calculus, right? I went from algebra all the way through calculus, and when I took Stanford's placement test, they placed me out of all their single variable calculus courses. And so I'm like, all right, well, I'll just keep doing math until someone tells me to stop.
Nice.
It's worked so far. It got rough this last quarter, summer quarter. Applied matrix theory.
What do you want to do with it, though?
Still work for NASA.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Are you still friends with Mario?
Yeah.
He's an incredible dude.
Yeah.
Incredible dude.
Love Mario.
Podcast. Yeah, he's a great guy. And he's a good. You and him both are great like lessons in life to like what's possible.
Yeah.
Anything is possible. Like when you just set your mind to it. I mean, two guys coming from the teams. You know what I mean? Where like you want to talk about rigidity, it's like that's like the epitome of it. And now look at you guys, both at Ivy League. I mean, he graduated from Ivy League school.
Yeah.
You're in an Ivy League school. You were going to graduate, and it's like
you
amazing,
don't
man.
believe it. You can't. That's the thing, and same thing with like when I was at the Navy recruiter, and he's like, "Oh, you can get a waiver for that." If you can't imagine yourself being this thing, you can't even have that dream.
Totally. Have you assimilated well into the culture of being in college?
Yeah. So it's funny. I was actually just listening to Mario's, and he said kind of the same thing. It's like I'm 31. I got there when I was 30, and a lot of people around me are, between 18 and 22, and I love it. It's everyone there is fascinating. I mean, there's this girl who graduated high school early, and she's written this bunch of code by the time she came here. Kids from ghettos who have like 15 brothers on one side and 14 on the other. Just all these really interesting people. And some vets or some older people say it's hard to get along. I found from the first day that I got there, I didn't know anybody. I'd go to the dining hall, find someone sitting by themselves, and just be like, "Hey, can I join you?"
That's awesome, man.
9 times out of 10, they're like, "Yes." And the 10th, if they're like, "I'm doing some reading," all right, cool. Next, who cares?
Yeah, for sure. Super cool. There's a book that somebody gave me about 4 years ago called Never Eat Alone. And
interesting.
I'll actually give you that book if you want.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So I met the guy one time. I met the author, and a friend of mine that I grew up with, where I was like, "Hey, he's I didn't know he's an author when I met him, And then he was like, "Yeah, he's actually an author, and I'll give you his book." And so I read it. It's a really good read, so I'll give it to you.
Awesome.
The other thing I wanted to ask you is, I'm going to ask you the questions I ask everyone that comes on here, actually. If you had one person or one book that inspired you the most, like throughout your life, who would that person be, and what would that book be, and why? And it could be both. It could be one or the other. It doesn't matter.
Okay. So I think the person, and this might be a little unconventional to not be like someone that I know personally, but I've always loved Arnold Schwarzenegger. Because the dude is an immigrant.
Yep.
He came over, had to work construction, worked his ass off at bodybuilding, changed the game in bodybuilding. I mean, when he started, they were just benching and curling. And he comes in, he's like, yeah, we're going to do squats too. We're going to do all this other stuff, right? So he changes the game. And then he's like, well, I want to be a movie star. And I'm like, nah, there's no
accent.
there's no roles for big muscular guys. Like the style of tough guy was like the, you know,
Yeah.
He's like, oh, really? I'll make a role. And he writes fucking Conan, right? And then, you know, he's like, I'm going to be the governor. I'm like, well, he can't. I mean, we know how that goes, right? Yep. So everywhere he goes, he's just like, no, I'm going to do this. If there's no place for me, I'll make a place. Yeah. And the book, so there was a book I read when I was young called Starship Troopers, and the book is very different from the movie. And it kind of paints this semi-glorification of military culture. It's just this really gritty, like, tough. I think what it really appealed to me was this guy Rico, who's the protagonist. You know, he joins the Federation, you know, the troopers, and goes through this training process that sounds a lot like BUD/S or / Marine boot camp, whatever, and has these really strong mentors. Like, just really awesome leadership. And, you know, there's this saying like men go to the military to find their fathers, kind of thing.
Interesting. Makes sense.
Yeah.
If you see like how similar a lot of our stories are, guys who are in the military, you know, it's like, huh.
You just want that tough role model.
Definitely.
Right. Which is funny because 2 platoons. I had to, without naming anybody, but like both my chiefs got fired. So like the chief is like your platoon sergeant or whatever, and
your platoon daddy.
Yeah, and like so these are the guys you're supposed to look up to. Both of them were out of shape. You know, so this is like platoon 1. This is my role model, right? Yeah. And we knew as the guys were like, this guy's kind of a joke, but that's what you get. Here, this is what we're offering you as your leader. The second platoon, same kind of thing. It was like, I mean, he put pillows in his rucksack. You know, this other guy was like bragging. He was like, yeah, I went to Yemen. It was great on deployment. We never had to leave the wire, and we were living in luxury. It's like, that's not what I want to hear. Yeah. I want to hear you, but then fast roping into some place with a machine gun on your back, right? And then my third chief was awesome, but I didn't last there very long.
Did you have any regrets about like your military service? Like, have you let go of like what could have been? You know what I mean? Like the fact that like you were training for so long to get to a deployment where you actually get, like you said, fast roping with a machine gun on your back and do like cool guy shit. Do you have any like bad feeling about fuck, I didn't get to do it?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've heard people say, you know, no regrets, you know, it's in the past and it's just lessons. Like, no, I fucking, if I could, if I was in that situation again, I wouldn't do the same thing. Right. If I could go back and have some control. I mean, but my biggest regrets are not, you know, I got in trouble and it ruined my career. My biggest regrets are the things where, you know, I hurt people. The things where actually someone was like, you know. Yeah. And my number one is when I was in Afghanistan, we were winding down, you know, like month 5 of a 6-month deployment, and we were doing our turnover. So we're just kind of taking the new platoons out, show them what's up. And my team leader, he came to me, he's like, hey doc, we're going on this short patrol. We don't really need you. We're not going very far. Just showing them around. And I was like, you know what? I'm fucking tired. So if you don't need me, if you're sure you don't need me, sure, I'll stay back. And one of my good friends got schwacked. He survived, but it's like I had one job. Yep. And
yeah, for sure.
You know, I wanted to take a nap.
Yep. I get that, man. It sucks. If you had, with all the lessons that you've learned, I mean, just listening to you talk and hearing some of the things, like there's got to be a bunch, but like, is there one that sticks out in your mind where it's like, you know what, if I could teach one person, if I can teach one kid that's coming up or just one person in life that's coming, you know, trying to figure their way out through life, and save them the heartache that I had to experience, what would that one lesson be that you would want to teach somebody to save them the heartache?
I would say think more about others. Like, seriously, think deeply about others, but less about what they think about you. Like, you don't have to, it's not like a zero-sum game. You can be invested in people and care about them and not care what they think about you.
Yeah. That's crazy because I think a lot of people, myself included, struggle with that one, where it's like you're constantly caring what people think and this and that. And so, like, for me, like, wanting to, like, come out and just be the authentic who I am, you know what I mean? Like, I think in my mind, like, I have a lot of love in my heart that I never let out. I was always, like, just very, like, closed off and rigid, and I pushed people away from me because I just didn't want people getting too close and whatever. The people that I loved hard, you know, but I could have been loving way more people than that, you know, because I do have a lot of compassion and love in my heart that I didn't show. And I was worried, like, oh, what are people going to think if I, like, come out with who I really am, you know what I mean? Like, I'm not this guy that just wants to fight and get crazy all the time. I'm a dude that actually just wants to hug you and we're chill, you know, it's all good. And so the last, like, couple months, it's really been about, like, just owning who I am, dude. Like, it's not about how many Instagram followers I have. It's not about how many likes or comments. I don't give a shit, you know what I mean? Like, I want to show up for people the best way that I know how, and just be who I am, and that's it, you know, and let go of it. That's freedom, in my opinion, you know, having the freedom to just be who you are and not care what other people think. But that's a great point, though, to be like, you can still, like, give your all to somebody like that and whatever, and you don't have to agree with them or whatever, but you don't, I forget how you phrased it or the way you worded it.
Yeah, just
you can love them but not care what they think at the same time. Yeah, and yeah, that's good, man. I like that.
I've had a really hard time with that. I oscillate between, you know, okay, I see. So it's about giving fewer fucks, you know, then you give fewer fucks and then you start, like, kind of being an asshole, but it's not one or the other. Right.
Yeah, and I've fallen trapped to that too. Like, I have no more fucks to give, so whatever. Only so many fucks to give in a lifetime, right?
That's right.
What do you want your legacy to be? If you were gonna die tomorrow, what would you want your legacy to be? How would you want to be remembered by people?
I gotta be honest with you. I don't love the language. I hear it being used a lot, where, like, we'll talk about, like, leaving a legacy, because
how do you want to be remembered then? I guess.
Yeah, because it implies this, like, you know, like the very thing, like, how do you want to be remembered? Because once I'm dead, nothing's gonna matter. I'll be dead. I'm gone. Like, what I've started trying to think about is, like, what do I want to? I want to inhabit a world where I feel good about what I've contributed. That's where I want to be. And I think for me right now, it is, I found myself, I actually got kind of sidetracked from the math thing, and I've been getting into creative writing, and I've found that there aren't a lot of stories. I can't find the stories that I want to read, which are stories about, kind of like you were talking about, guys, like where you can tell people you can be tough, you can be the teenager who cut himself, and then be tough. You can, you know, no one's talking about, like, sexuality, right? Yeah. Like, can you be a tough guy and be gay? Right? Yeah. There's gay stories, there's military stories. Who's talking about that? Right? And I'm not necessarily, but
necessarily.
I'm not personally, but like, I worked at gay bars while I was to make extra money, you know? Totally. And it just opened my eyes, and I saw this world where it was like, holy shit, you know, that all the you know, the rigidity, right, that we were talking about with the, what do they say? Like, I'm just gonna say, like, one of my platoon leaders used to say, like, suck one dick, you're a faggot. Like, what does that mean? Like, now you're this thing, you're a faggot, and you're branded as this forever. What the fuck? Well, you know, and you're a 25-year-old guy trying to process, like, how do I view the world? And that's part of what your input is. Yep. So
the screen that gets put in front of you, unfortunately, in the military is like, it's a skewed view of reality, in my opinion. I mean, it's like not real life, you know. And it took a lot of unfucking myself, if you will, like when I got out of the military, and even now, dude, like learning new things. You know, like when I married my wife, I wasn't. My parents were like I said, were like evangelist type. You know, like gnarly with the religion, only G-rated movies, you know, no violence, you know, so we were lucky if we got a PG in there, you know, every once in a while. And they went gnarly with it. But part of that, it closed me off to learning about other things, like about homosexuality, about gay people, about transgender, about you know, people doing drag, you know, things like that. Like I was never exposed to it. And so like I've had people ask me, because I grew up playing football and I was like the football captain and blah, blah, whatever. Oh, are you like a gay basher? I'm like, no, dude. Like, no, never. No. I mean, did I ever poke fun at people or whatever in a joking manner? Maybe. And if I did, I'm genuinely sorry. Like, I never want to make anybody feel bad about themselves.
Yeah.
But a lot of my stuff that growing up and into adulthood, it was never like a bashing type of thing. It was just a lack of understanding thing. It was an ignorance thing. It was like, I wasn't exposed to it. I just didn't know. So when I married my wife and we started talking about, you know, she had a gay friend and this and that, I was like, so like, she's gay, like with like a girl, but like, does she ever like want to like have sex with a dude? Does she ever like want cock, like ever? And I wasn't asking to be silly. I was genuinely curious. Like, so you mean to tell me she sees dudes and she never wants to fuck like that? Whoa. Like my mind was like blown. I was really like weirded out by that. And it wasn't in any way like a way to like belittle that person.
It's not a criticism of the lifestyle
at all. It was just like that's fascinating. And so we would be laying in bed sometimes and we would be talking about like a gay couple or whatever. And I would just start cracking up and, you know, we would talk about like, I just couldn't, in my brain, I couldn't think of like another dude being with another dude. For me, it was so foreign. I was like, oh, dude, that's so weird. And I start cracking up. Like, how's that natural to them? You know, like whatever. And she's like, are you seriously? Like, I'd be in tears laughing. And like I said, it wasn't a criticism.
Yeah.
It was just like wow, I've never thought about this stuff because I wasn't exposed to it. And I think as I've gotten older, I'm so grateful for the fact that I've been exposed to those things, man, because it opens my mind to be like, don't be such a rigid fuck. You know what I mean? Like, they're people too, you know, and like, and learn more, like be more accepting, be more forgiving, be more like, I don't know, welcoming to people, you know. And like I said, when I went to that retreat, it's like I felt like I was nothing like the people that were going to be there. I was like, dude, how am I going to fit in here? Now imagine like gay people that are in a society where there's not that many gay people. There's more straight people than gays, and it's like they probably feel pretty awkward.
Yeah,
exactly like I felt going to that retreat. But then the feeling of being so welcome with a lack of judgment is so huge. And so with that, it's like, dude, I want to bring that to the world. I want to bring that where I can show up and hopefully nobody in my presence will ever feel unwelcome, ever. Like, and if they do, I hope they're man or woman enough to just come to me and bring it to me because I want to know, like, because I don't ever want to make someone feel left out or whatever. And it's actually put me in a couple bad spots a couple times where, like, if we went out to eat or whatever, I grew up poor, dude. Like, I didn't have a lot of money. And there was times where, like, people were like, hey, we're going to go to dinner or whatever, and I don't want to be the oddball out. So I'd be like, okay, cool, I'll go. Fuck, I don't know how I'm going to pay for this, dude. Like, I have no money, dude. And I remember that feeling of how that felt, like being like, oh, dude, I can't even pay for, like, a bean and cheese burrito right now. I am so poor. I'm just going to be like, oh, I'm fasting.
Yeah.
So I want to make something up so I don't have to own the fact that I'm broke. And so because of that, like, whenever I would be out with other people, if I even saw, like, I even picked up just an inkling of the fact that maybe they were struggling financially a little bit, I would pick up the tab every time. Every time.
Yeah.
And my wife's like, why do you keep doing that? You know, like, these people probably have money. Like, you're just, and I was like, because I'm picking up on the fact that they probably don't have that much, or this is like a stretch for them. And I know what that feels like. And I don't want anybody to ever feel that way. She's like, yeah, but, you know, you kind of got to
curb it.
You got to stop doing that a little bit. But yeah, so I never, ever want to make anybody feel less than. And it sounds to me like that's exactly the same trajectory that you're on, you know, especially being in the environment that you're in right now. You know, because I feel like colleges are very progressive. College campus is progressive and liberal and, like, very, like, opening, you know. You go there with... you know, they say you go there with an empty mind, you leave with an open one.
Ideally, yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's awesome. What do you have in the works now? I mean, you're going to Stanford, but like, is your plan still to go to NASA?
So the writing has become a pretty consuming thing for me.
Yeah.
I've done a couple. I call them meditation retreats, but I pretty much just lock myself in my room for a weekend or for 5 days and just write. So I'm trying to develop that. The thing I've had this experience a couple times. One of them was when I heard David Goggins talk. That was one. Another one was actually Jay. He said something on your Jay, right. The ATF guy.
Oh yeah, Jay Dubbins. Yeah.
Yeah, he said something on your show. Something about feeling like when people are congratulating you, but you don't feel like you've earned it. It almost feels like they're mocking, and it wasn't like a huge thing. But I just had this. I was like, I didn't know anybody else felt that.
Yeah.
So it was like you said, like being seen, feeling that there is a space for these feelings that you didn't know were legitimate, I guess.
Totally. There's a lot of guys that deal with that, man. Like I'm one of them. There's another dude that I was stationed with, same thing, where it's like I didn't go down range. I didn't get deployed and get to go to combat, and that's what I wanted to do. The cards weren't in my favor, and it didn't happen. So for years, bro, when I got out, like people would come to me and say Happy Veterans Day, and I was like, my instant knee-jerk reaction was like, the fuck off, you know?
Yeah.
Like, I didn't even, and it's taken probably the last year or two where I'm okay with it now.
Mm-hmm.
But for the longest time,
And that's how long? After how long?
Dude, I got out in 2003.
Shit.
So, like, I mean, I carried that, bro, for over a decade. Where people would say Happy Veterans Day, and it was like nails on a chalkboard because I felt like, dude, I didn't get an arm taken, I didn't get a leg blown off. I was overseas, but I didn't go to the sandbox with everyone else. I just didn't feel like I was part of the tribe, you know. And it wasn't like any fault of my own, but it was like definitely something. It was a tough pill for me to swallow. So, and I had guys like hitting me up, and they had been downrange, and they were just like, oh, I didn't get shot. I didn't, I'm not missing any limbs. And people telling me Happy Veterans Day. Mm-hmm. And it's like, wow, dude, it's a real thing, man. A lot of people struggle with it for sure. For sure.
Yeah. So I'm trying to. I want to use my writing to, make space for more people to feel things. And like mental health is a big thing for me.
Yeah.
I read a lot. There are references about mental health, and people will say, and this is not to discredit them, but it's like they'll talk about like, hey, this felt bad, and it's like, okay, great, but that's kind of like a drive-by, and there's kind of like levels of art, and I think we kind of talked about the very little at the beginning. Like level 1 is figure out what you want to say. Level 2 is like make others understand what you want to say, and level 3 is make others feel what you want them to feel.
I like that.
And I don't think there's enough. I think, I have no idea what I'm talking about. I'm not a psychologist, but I think a lot of what we're struggling with is because people like me are 14 years old, 19 years old, and they're like, I'm the only one going through this. And when someone else says, I'm sad, they're like, it's not the same.
Yeah.
Right? But if we could actually talk about, like me, Nestor Walters, there's a name, there's a face. This is my story. This is how it felt. Like, you're not just driving past the house. Come inside and sit in my living room. Experience this with me. Then you can really know that you're not alone.
Yep. That's kind of what I hope this podcast will do for people. I really do. I hope people sharing their story. I mean, I see it in my DMs and people sending me messages like, man, that hit heavy, like whatever. I didn't know that, this person was dealing with the same thing, whatever. And it's opening more people up to want to share their story authentically with just full transparency and vulnerability and embracing it, man. Mm-hmm. So, no, I think that's beautiful, dude. And I think, I don't know, you have a way of like articulating things that I think it's gonna, like, I don't know, man. I don't know if I see you at NASA. If it's what you like want, then dude, I want it for you. But I think that like the world, I don't know. The way I see Nestor is like the world could use you in just such a better way as far as like leaving the world a better place. For humanity. If you have
Well, I'm open to suggestions. I honestly,
Sure.
I'm at a place right now where, like my brother, the same younger brother. I love him. I don't know how I got blessed with such amazing brothers. But he said, you're in college right now, and you're trying all these little things. I have a little blog, I have my Instagram page, and he's like, you're trying to get results, but people in college go to college for degrees, not for results. Learn, go through the process, make your connections, meet the people you need to meet, and then see what you're going to do. So I'm okay inhabiting this space where I don't, people are like, have this purpose, have this whatever. I don't have that right now, and I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
I'm developing this thing. I have some interests. I love helping other veterans and other people. People reach out to me. They're like, hey, help me with this application essay. Help me with this whatever, writing stuff. And I haven't turned anyone away yet. People have college. No.
No?
Not with. I mean, if it gets to a point where it's like, help me with my resume. It's just been friends and family so far.
Okay. It's a good way to make some extra cash, though, if you're looking for extra dough.
Yeah, if it comes down, if it gets to that point, it hasn't yet. But yeah, I'm eager. I'm looking for ways to give back to the veteran community, to low-income people trying to go to college. Basically, everything that I am, which is a lot of things. Right?
What's the best way for people to find you?
So I have an Instagram page, Nestor_Walters. That's Nestor, which needs clarifying because otherwise it's Nestor, like the person who nests, and that's not it. Yeah, and I'm relatively active there. DMs are fine. I should probably add my email to that. I'm on Facebook. That's mostly friends and family. LinkedIn if you're trying to be professional. But yeah, Instagram.
What's your email if you don't mind sharing it, so if people want to hit you up?
Oh yeah, so it's let's see, we'll do nestor.walters.293@gmail.com.
There you go.
So that's the one. And yep, and then I have the blog, which is nestorwalters.com.
Awesome, man. Good shit, dude. Well, I really appreciate you stopping by, man, and doing this podcast with me
Yeah, thanks, Josh.
and sharing your story. And I'm pumped, man, to see what's gonna happen with you.
I'm pumped to see what's gonna happen with you.
Nah, because you just have this way about you, dude, where anything's possible with you, man. So it's I won't be shocked to see you at NASA. I won't be shocked to see you some crazy ass famous author, dude. Who knows, man? Or running some meditation retreat, dude, with a bunch of hippies up in Northern California, dude.
Start my own cult.
Yeah, dude, totally, dude. You know how it's done already, man. You got a leg up on the competition. So, nah, man, but thank you so much, man. I really appreciate you, brother. And if there's anything I can ever do for you, by all means, man, reach out to me anytime, brother.
Likewise.
All right, brother, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Getting Real with Josh Boyer. If you're loving the podcast, please leave a rating and subscribe. You can follow us on all social media platforms and YouTube at gettingreal_. You can also check us out at joshboyer.com.